Yes, proceed. Hello, member, are you a Catholic?
I'm a Catholic.
You're a Catholic, so you need only the cross.
I, Samuel Abdullah Jinapor,
swear by the Almighty God
swear by the Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give before this committee
that the evidence I shall give before this committee
touching the matter in issue shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you. Honorable Samuel Abdullah Jinapor, this is your first time in Parliament, and I want to emphasize that I refer to membership of the House because that is the main qualification for being a minister. You have been a Deputy Chief of Staff for 4 years in the past government. I know that you were called to the bar some 5 years or so ago. If there are any other things apart from this that you wish the committee to know, please tell us before we start asking you questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, let me thank the distinguished members of the August Appointments Committee of Parliament for having me. Mr. Chairman, I will rely on my CV, except to add that I had my basic education in Apiasoche Preparatory School in Ashanti Mampong, in the Ashanti region of Ghana, and Fufuso Presby Primary School. Mr. Chairman, I had my junior high school education in Damango, in the Savannah region of Ghana, and I'm married to Nada Doreen Bilijo Jinapor with 4 children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, Chairman, let me have your leave to warm him up with two questions. This man started with physics and he is now into law. Why the diversion from physics?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, that is a very interesting question. Yes, I studied physics. I had my education, secondary education, all in the sciences. Whilst in the secondary school, I did physics, chemistry, biology, and additional maths. I ended up at KUST to read pure physics and earn a BSc in physics. Mr. Chairman, I veered off to read law. I suspect strongly that my association with the president at the time, Nana Akufo-Addo, who was then the Minister for Foreign Affairs and whom I had met as a very young man. And Mr. Chairman, you can imagine that when you associate with President Akufo-Addo, law becomes very attractive. And so that's the explanation I can give.
Right. Great inspiration then. It's good you joined the landed fraternity. Great, good decision. Now, run us through this issue about Shraj report, which bordered on some allegation against you. How did you feel? And if you can share with us this Shraj matter.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the matters relating to those allegations, I must begin by respectfully stating that those allegations were quite surprising to me. But given that this committee is a committee of record, what I can say, really, is that as I found those allegations as quite surprising, because with the greatest of respect, they were not founded on any basis. But fortunately for me, Mr. Chairman, this committee is a committee of record, and therefore I have in my hand here the report of Shraj in respect of those allegations made against me and my colleague, Honorable Asenso Boachi.
Honorable Member, let's be clear. A matter has gone to Shraj already?
That is correct.
Determined?
That is correct.
Very well.
That is correct. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, following those allegations, and those allegations were made by A+.
So there's a Shraj report that has exonerated you. That's what Chairman wanted to know from you,
exactly.
As a matter of record.
And I'm saying that I have the report here.
Chairman, with your indulgence, what was the determination of Shraj on those matters of allegation that bordered on your conduct? Just refer to it. What was the determination of Shraj? And then the date. Share with us the date. Thank you, Chair.
I will do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have in my hand the report of Shraj dated 4/12/2017 with reference number CHRAJ/322/2017/414, titled "In the Matter of the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and in the matter of allegations of corruption, thievery, and abuse of power between Dynamic Youth Movement of Ghana, complainant, and Mr. Samuel A. Jinapor and Mr. Francis Asenso Boachi, respondents." Mr. Chairman, the report is detailed. I won't go through all of it, but it essentially does a thorough analysis of the respondent's position, the complainant's position. It took evidence. The evidence were analyzed by Shraj, and of significance to me and hopefully to this committee is the conclusion of Shraj. And Mr. Chairman, the conclusion of Shraj can be found at paragraph 12, titled "Decision." And this was the decision of Shraj, quote, "The Commission is satisfied that the evidence does not support the allegations of corruption and abuse of power against Messrs. Samuel A. Jinapor and Messrs. Asenso Boachi, the two deputy chiefs of staff. The allegations could not be substantiated whatsoever. Accordingly, this complaint is hereby dismissed as being without merit and totally unwarranted." End quote. Thank you.
Chairman, you said evidence was taken. Was evidence taken from A+ that you are aware of by Shraj in this matter?
Yes, evidence was taken from Mr. A+.
You think that it was just malicious on the basis of the finding of Shraj, that probably just growth? Is that your thinking?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully think that on the back of the ruling, the determination of Shraj, those allegations were totally unwarranted, they were baseless. I have absolutely no doubt about it.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, the nominee at a very young age became the deputy chief of staff.
I'll give you that.
Having gone through this trauma, and you know, in politics, this political enterprise, all we have is our individual image. How did you cope with this trauma of you being tainted, especially when Shraj eventually exonerated you? Within that period, how did you cope?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I should say it was difficult. It was very difficult, and especially I'm sure that many of the members of this committee will attest to how it feels when you are maligned, when an allegation is made against you which is unfounded. I mean, especially when the whole country and the media picks it up. And we all recall how major it was in this country. And it generated a lot of controversy. So it was difficult, I must admit. And now I personally was particularly relieved and thankful that the matter finally was tabled before Shraj. And Shraj delved into it and came to these firm conclusions. So it was a very difficult matter.
Chairman, final on my warm-up. Your brother, your blood brother, is a member of the NDC and a member of this House. You are a member of the MPP fraternity. You hold a high position. You're going to hold a very high position now. And no doubt in the previous administration, your Deputy Chief of Staff, very high position. How do you, with the political differences between you and your brother, how do you manage the seeming political conflict, if I should put it? Home. Is there peace at home?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's a question I've had to answer many, many times. Well, first of all, with respect, Honorable Leader, the assumption is that we live in the same home. We don't. I'm a married man with 4 children. He is a married man with 3 children. So
Honorable Jinapor, how long have you been married?
I have 4 children. I have 4 girls.
Honorable Jinapor, how long have you been married?
I did triplets, at a goal. So we live very independent lives, and what I can say is just in 2 folds. First is that I can say that for myself, and I can say that for him, that we are both very, very committed to our respective political parties. I don't intend to go further than that. We are very, very committed. He is strongly committed to his party. I'm probably more committed to my party. And we are also very cordial. I mean, we are cordial as any siblings anywhere can be. That's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you. I would want to end with this comment. On the 7th of January, that unfortunate incident on the House floor, I noticed that your brother was heated up. You were also heated up. But at the point that 2 of you got on, and he went to his side, and the turbulence was coming down, and you also gave a word on our side. I hope that with your explanation given as to the cordial relationship that exists between the 2 of you, in spite of political differences, in times of trouble, the 2 of you would help calm waters in this House floor for the benefit of this country. I hope I can have that assurance from you.
Mr. Chairman, the leader can have the assurance. Thank you.
Chairman, let me have a bite of the Deputy Leader's warm-up. You are Deputy Chief of Staff. Is that the case?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
What was your schedule and activities or probably responsibilities in the office of the President as Deputy Chief of Staff?
Mr. Chairman, as we all do know, the Constitution vests executive powers in the President. And the President is a repository of executive powers in our country. He exercises that mandate through the office of the Chief of Staff. So, Chairman, if you want, the interface between the presidency and the world is normally through the office of the Chief of Staff. The President is dealing with his ministers, he's dealing with the world, he's dealing with chiefs, parliament, organs of state. The Chief of Staff's office is the interface between the presidency and the world, as well as the discharge of the executive mandate of the President. So I understood my work very clearly from the outset. And those were the instructions the president gave me on that important day when he invited me to his office to inform me that he was going to appoint me as Deputy Chief of Staff. The instruction was very simple. You are to assist the Chief of Staff. And Mr. Chairman, for the 4 years that I was in that office, my schedule was to assist the Chief of Staff. And the Chief of Staff...
there were no specific schedules or responsibility, like you are responsible for port activities related to the port, you are not responsible for foreign delegations. There probably must have been a specific role.
Yeah, there were. There was.
Speak to that.
Yes,
Thank you, Chair.
I was Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of operations. And Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of operations, essentially, and I will continue to use the word assist, because the back stops with the Chief of Staff. The Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of operations essentially is to assist the Chief of Staff to, first of all, run the presidency of Jubilee House, the workings of Jubilee House. And, Mr. Chairman, I know the Honorable Minority Leader is even more experienced in the issues of the governance of our country than I am. The presidency itself is a whole enterprise. How the office runs, the issues involved there, cabinet issues, policy matters, monitoring, evaluation, following up. The president was, for instance, to set up committees of ministers. You are involved in it. And the general, if you want, running of the country. The president runs the country. The Chief of Staff assists him to run the country. I assist the Chief of Staff to assist the president to run the country. So,
Chairman, I get it from the nominee that he only assisted the Chief of Staff and the President. May I now take you to the world of lands and forestry? And with respect, Chairman, may I refer the nominee, with your indulgence, to Article 268, 1 and 2 of the 1992 Constitution, and to solicit what his views are on those provisions and how he intends to walk the law on those matters. Article 2681 provides any transaction, contract, or undertaking involving the grant of a right or concession by or on behalf of any person, including the government of Ghana, to any other person or body of persons, howsoever described, for the exploitation of any mineral, water, or other natural resource of Ghana, made or entered into after the coming into force of this Constitution, shall be subject to ratification by Parliament. So watch my words there. Subject to ratification by Parliament. Then 2682 provides, Parliament may, by resolution supported by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all the members of Parliament, exempt from the provisions of Clause 1 of this article any particular class of transaction, contract, or undertaking. Once you are a lawyer, it means that you studied interpretation. What is your understanding of this constitutional provision, and what obligation does it impose on you as probable Minister for Lands and Forestry? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'd like to make the point that a careful examination of Chapter 21 of the National Constitution will clearly reveal the importance the framers of the Constitution places on the lands and natural resources of our country. Mr. Chairman, if I may, the lands and natural resources of our country is the only sector which is found expressions in almost all the national constitutions of our country from 1969 to 1979. There was a full chapter in the 1969 Constitution dedicated to lands and natural resources. So was there a chapter in the 1979 Constitution dedicated to the lands and natural resources of our country. Mr. Chairman, so the reason, my thinking, is that the framers of our Constitution seems to have placed such importance on the lands and natural resources of our country is because, by all intents and purposes, the lands and natural resources of Ghana constitute the property of the Ghanaian people, vested in their president, to be held in trust for the benefit of the Ghanaian people. And therefore, Mr. Chairman, Article 268, in my view, then ensures that given that the lands and natural resources constitute the property of this country, Parliament becomes the accountable body for the utilization and management of the lands and natural resources of our country, which is why the grant of a mineral right will require parliamentary ratification. And, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, my conceptual interpretation of it is that the natural resources belong to the Ghanaian people. It's their property. It's vested in their president to deal with or deal in for their benefit. Parliament, pursuant to Article 268, then becomes the accountable body or state for the utilization of the mineral resources of our country. So if the president, through his Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, grants a mineral right, the framers of the Constitution requires that such a grant be brought before Parliament. So Parliament can cross the T's, can dot the I's, and will be satisfied that as representatives of the people, their property in the mineral resources of our country are being dealt with properly. Mr. Chairman, if I may add, if I may conclude by adding that the Supreme Court got the golden opportunity to speak to or make a pronouncement on this requirement of ratification. And this was done, Mr. Chairman, in the case of Republic versus High Court, General Jurisdiction 6, Accra, S-Party Attorney General, Eston Quebec Group Limited, interested party. Mr. Chairman, and in that case, the gravamen of the issue before the court was whether or not a grant of a mineral right without parliamentary ratification will be deemed valid. The Supreme Court, Mr. Chairman, the highly respected judge, Justice Mafusa, said this, and I just will seek your permission to read the exact holding of the Supreme Court. And I quote, they said, the intention of subjecting any transaction involving the exploitation of any mineral to parliamentary ratification was to ensure that such transaction had received the approval of the actual owners of the mineral, the people of Ghana. Such approval expressed through their representatives in Parliament as engineered by the Constitution. End quote. So, Mr. Chairman, I think the matter is clear. I mean,
all right.
You have to.
In that same clause, you find for the exploitation of any mineral, water or other natural resource. So water is put in the class of minerals and natural resource. Today, there's a driller at a new social center I'm constructing at the Kwai, drilling water. Now, between September and now, I've drilled boreholes, mechanized boreholes, about 50 of them in my constituency. Are they invalid? Because I did not get, not just parliamentary approval, I didn't get any concession from anybody. We just put the rig at the location and we drill. Is water in this clause? What is the drilling of water? Should it be construed the same way as we construe minerals and other natural resources?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, water is under the Water Resources Commission, which is not an agency under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. I should also respectfully submit that the remit of natural resources as construed in Ghana and under our constitution is a matter that I'm not sure I will have the final say, because there's a lot of discussion about it. petroleum resources, for instance, are those natural resources. Water resources, are these natural resources. But for my purposes, the instructions from the President, and hopefully, if I'm fortunate to receive the recommendation of this House, of the recommendation of this committee, and the approval of the House, I will keep to the quote that has been cut from. Even that is such a big load to carry. So we'll leave it at that. Except to add, Mr. Chairman, finally, that the provision referred to by the Honorable Minority Leader, being Article 2682, I think that provision can be a bit of a saving grace. And I want to raise the matter of small-scale mining and whether or not there is a requirement for parliamentary ratification when mineral rights are granted under small-scale mining. Technically, and by the confines of the constitutional provision, that yes, there should be. But is it practical? Does that help the industry? I think those are matters that we can discuss. Thank you.
Chairman, but what Chairman raised, probably you can just say that when you get there, because you yourself in your answer, you were emphatic. Chapter 21, Lands and Natural Resources. So don't run away under Water Resources Commission. What Chairman referred to, Article 268, is within what you referred to in your chapter, but still there. May I now, Chairman, take the nominee to Article 257. And it reads in 1, all public lands in Ghana shall be vested in the President on behalf of and in trust for the people of Ghana. I know you are a royal, so you know what land politics means for the people in northern Ghana and every part of the country. But for my purposes, 2573 is what I want to seek your view on. For the avoidance of doubt, it is hereby declared that all lands in the northern, upper east, and upper west region, now, Mr. Speaker, by extension, I can add Savannah region, of Ghana, which immediately before the coming into force of this constitution were vested in the government of Ghana, are not public lands within the meaning of clause 1 and 2 of this article. What is your understanding of this?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding of this provision is that the public lands of Ghana have been defined by the Constitution. The public lands of Ghana is defined, first of all, in Article 2572 of the National Constitution. The vesting of the public lands of Ghana in the President for the people of Ghana has also been well established in Article 2571. My understanding is very straightforward, Mr. Chairman. The framers of the Constitution intended that lands in northern, upper east, and upper west regions of Ghana, which immediately before the coming into force of this Constitution were vested in the government of Ghana, are not public lands within the meaning of clauses 1 and 2. And so I will think, really, I mean, this can be, somebody can take this up at the Supreme Court. But from where I sit, I will think that lands which were vested before the coming into force of the Constitution are automatically divested. Mr. Chairman, I should add that there is a whole arrangement and discussion and debate about vested lands. And in fact, Mr. Chairman, this House, Parliament itself, having enacted Land Act 2020 Act 1036, makes a comment on vested lands. And Mr. Chairman, respectfully and with your indulgence, Section 271, 2, and 3 of Act 1036 speaks specifically about vested lands. And this is what it says. With your permission, I read. Quote, 2701, the President shall,
on the recommendations of the Lands Commission, authorize the divesting of any land which prior to the coming into force of the Constitution was vested in the President by any law. 2, within 6 months of the coming into force of this Act, the Lands Commission shall begin the process of evaluating all existing vested lands with a view to recommending to the President the divesting of those lands. And 3, finally, the divesting of land shall be by executive instrument published in the Gazette. End quote. Mr. Chairman, so what it means is that vested lands, whether they will be divested or not, will be determined within the confines of Section 270, 1, 2, and 3. It will be my view that the lands which were vested prior to the promulgation of the 1992 Constitution are exempted. But the question as to whether or not lands which were vested post-1992 will still be captured, we can continue to have that discussion. I'm not too sure about how we can handle those.
Chairman, it's noted. You've just referred to the Lands Act, which was passed by Parliament Act 1063. Now, investors complain about the process, tortuous, cumbersome process of getting title to land, investors. Ghanaian businesses complain, and you know what title means. Even sometimes when you want to get a credit facility of a loan, you need to demonstrate ownership via title. Now, it has affected Garnet's rating in our ease of doing business. Just process of land and related matters of litigation, investors come in, the next day they have to be walking to court instead of the farms or the industry they purport to build. How will you use the new current lands law to improve Ghana's ease of doing business should you become minister? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think this is a very important question. And since my nomination, I've been reflecting on literally all the issues under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. And if I'm fortunate to receive the recommendation of this committee and the approval of Parliament, and I assume office at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Mr. Chairman, I want to submit that the implementation, the effective implementation of this new Lands Act, Act 1036, will go a great way of improving the administration of land in our country. Mr. Chairman, it's still a piece of legislation, yes. We will require to make sure that we publicize it. We have to get a country to be aware of it, to know about the implications of the provisions of this act. We must have a strategy and a policy to ensure that this act is well implemented. Mr. Chairman, I say this because I've taken some look at Act 1036, and I should respectfully commend Parliament for enacting this law. My view, Mr. Chairman, is that literally all the thorny, difficult issues relating to land administration seems to have been, this act seems to have intervened in almost all of them. And if you take a look at the act, it's far-reaching, it's detailed. For instance, in Part 1...
Oh, Chairman, I appreciate it. Far-reaching, detailed. Will you reduce the number of days that it takes any Ghanaian or investor to acquire title to land should you be approved as minister?
Mr. Chairman, I will endeavor to do that. And I endeavor to do that through threefold. One, the implementation of this Act 1036, because an effective enforcement of this act itself. I mean, as you know, Mr. Chairman, the issues of stool, skin, clan, family, people who have interest in land, the requirement for them to demarcate their land, register it at the Lands Commission to avoid a double sale, the issues relating to whether a couple can sell land by himself or by herself, all of those issues are tackled in there. So the effective implementation of this act will help. Digitizing the operations of the land administration, Lands Commission is key. and decentralizing the operations and services of the Lands Commission. I think this three-pronged approach: one, the implementation of this act; two, digitizing the records.
Nominee,
Are
you the one to decentralize Lands Commission, or the chapter? The chapter you refer to deals with it, because you already have Regional Lands Commission, you have National Lands Commission, which are all creations of the Constitution. But just to end here, Chairman, so that our colleagues can scrutinize our the nominee. In your response to an earlier question by the deputy leader, you referred to the Exxon Cubic ruling, and you quoted Mafusao, respected Justice of the Supreme Court, when he said that parliamentary ratification is an imperative. Should you get to the ministry and it's brought to your attention that there are over 35 mining companies operating in Ghana without parliamentary ratification, what will you do?
Mr. Chairman, I think the matters to do with Eastern Cubic are beyond me. The Supreme Court has made a firm pronouncement on those, so that for me is a fait accompli. The matters of other mining rights or leases which have not been ratified, we have to find an expeditious way of making sure that they are presented to Parliament.
Will your expeditious way be that you declare them illegal or you come to Parliament to ratify it? What will you do?
Mr. Chairman, the ruling, respectfully, in the Eastern Cubic was not entirely on the lack of ratification. The basis for the holdings of the Supreme Court were not anchored on simply not ratifying. There were other reasons why.
What were the other reasons in your view, Chair?
I think I have the brief here, and I can. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll be more than happy to furnish the committee with a judgment of the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court
but
judgment.
Essentially, the point I'm making is that
It's all right, Honourable Member. The Supreme Court judgment, we can assess it if we consider it necessary. Yes. All right, yes, Reverend.
I'm grateful, Honorable Chair. Congratulations, Honorable Minister-Designate. Upon your approval, not only will you go in history as the youngest member of President Akufo-Addo's second-term cabinet, but also will be the youngest minister to occupy the mandate as the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources. With the enormity of work in that sector in view and the complexity of challenges in view, how does that impose a sense of responsibility on you to deliver your mandate creditably, knowing that the creditable discharge of your mandate will be an inspiration to many youth who aspire to take a role in governance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, yes, I'm relatively young, but I'm also mindful of the fact that I had a rare opportunity of working with the President for many years when he was in opposition, and as one of his chief aides at Jubilee House when he was President. And my view is, having worked with the President for 4 years, I believe that in all humility and modesty, I must have acquired some experience and the tools to be able to give out my best. But Mr. Chairman, to conclude, my attitude to these matters, whether old or young, has to do with your attitudes, Mr. Chairman, and those attitudes of being humble enough to learn and to listen and to consult and to cooperate and to collaborate. And on that note, I want to put it on record at this committee that if I get the opportunity, I intend to knock on the doors of Parliament, and I intend to work closely with Parliament, because the issues involved in lands and natural resources, you cannot be successful unless
you work with Parliament. There's a lot of experts and people with capacity in this House, which I intend to tap into, and to work hard and to try to live above board in integrity. But, Mr. Chairman, a lot of examples have been made across the world about age and the rest. But I have a homegrown example, which is that I take inspirations from the Honorable Minority Leader, whom in 2009 was made Minister for Communication at the age of 38. He was a year older than me, and that is an inspiration. So I believe if I marshal the correct attitudes, and I'm not too sure that the Honorable Minority Leader did badly at all as Minister for Communication.
Do you want to bring him into, and you know he may react to this matter.
Oh.
So just stay on safe waters.
Mr. Chairman, he did. I think he held his own as Minister for Communication at the age of 38, and I believe that if I stay humble and I stay focused, I should be able to contribute my bit. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Honorable Nominee. On exploitation of minerals in Ghana, Ghana is endowed with many minerals, of which studies have established them in very viable quantities. Over the years, the focus of the country has seemed to be biased on gold production or exploitation of gold, to the under-exploitation of other economically viable metals, and in particular industrial minerals, i.e. salt, limestone, clinker, and the rest. What direction would you provide when given the nod to focus other attention on these minerals, industrial minerals in particular, salt, limestone, clinker, with all the economic viability and the economic potentials they possess to exploit them?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think by the grace of God, if I get a nod of this committee, I will have the benefit of expert advice, and I will also work with all the stakeholders in the industry and the ministry to be able to formulate policies for all of these areas. I don't want to pretend that I have all the answers here. And so whatever collaborative efforts will be needed will be done. But the member is very right. Salt is a very major mineral, it's a very important resource that we have to tap into. They call it the white gold. And Ghana is very strategic because we have enough commercial deposits of salt, which I believe we have to exploit. And the full value chain of salt has to be established here in Ghana. Mr. Chairman, for instance, you cannot build an integrated aluminum industry without salt. You cannot build the integrated iron and steel industry in Ghana without salt. The petrochemical industry cannot actually thrive without salt. So salt is extremely important. And so the measures that are to be put in place to develop salt fully, I know that the administration of President Akufo-Addo in his first term has made some attempts. Adasongo is one example where I know a mining lease has been granted. There's an attempt to exploit the salt there. But I think that it's gotten to a time where we probably should consider the establishment of a salt development authority in Ghana, whose mandate will be responsible for building the full value chain of salt in Ghana. Today, Mr. Chairman, Nigeria consumes a lot of salt, and yet Nigeria imports salt from far away Brazil, simply because we don't have a salt terminal in Ghana. The distance between Ghana and Nigeria is closer, and yet they still have to go far away to import salt. I believe if we get this authority in place where we can have a refinery for salt, we can have a terminal for salt, it will help a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lastly, on lands, does this concern on agitations for compulsorily acquired lands to be released? Honorable Nominee, when given the nod, what leadership will you provide to address compulsorily acquired lands to be released?
He just answered that question. He just spoke to that question. If you want to have another question, otherwise I'll move on. Yes, Nilante Vanderpool.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. Let me first commend the brother of my roommate for this appointment. My first question to you is something very worrying. Recently, President Nana initiated the fight against Galamsey with a hope of saving the dissipation of our forests and water bodies. Evidence shows that some of the people who sabotaged the effort of the president were people within your party. What assurances are you going to give us that as much as possible, you will ensure that these people do not take advantage of political...
Are you mentioning anybody specifically? Otherwise, you assume that he knows somebody who sabotaged somebody.
No.
If not...
Oh, I said some of the people, it's clear. It's that this one is public knowledge. In fact, source.
Don't ignore their
former
size.
Minister for Environment.
Honorable, ignore their size and talk to me. Yeah.
What assurance are you going to give Ghanaians that you will not condone such political apparatchiks using political influences to get into such a situation where they will sabotage efforts of a sitting president in mitigating some of these things that affect our environment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we all will acknowledge that in every government and in every dispensation, when you are rolling out policy or implementing policies, especially when you are dealing with very intricate, complicated areas such as illegal small-scale mining, you will have problems. There's absolutely no two ways about that. I have taken time to understudy a lot of the literature, and it is clear that when Honorable Eunice Afuseni was Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, he encountered a lot of problems, and he will admit it. When my uncle Alhaji Collins Dauda was Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, he encountered a lot of problems. When Honorable Peter Amewu went into the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry, similar problem. Honorable Asmachirem is not an exception. So I want to agree with you, Honorable Member, that in such crusades, in such fights, you will come across challenges. You will come across stumbling blocks. We all know it. It happened under NDC. It's happened under MPP. You have party people, you have big wigs who want to frustrate the situation. But what is important, and what I can say without a shred of equivocation, is that the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is absolutely committed to making an impact in this illegal small-scale mining industry. His policies were rolled out in the first term, and indeed, there were some achievements, there were some challenges. If I get the opportunity, my instructions from the President are very clear, that I should go there and keep my head focused and work hard to ensure that we reduce the incidences of illegal small-scale mining in our country. Mr. Chairman, look, anywhere you have extractive industry, here we call it Galamsey. In South Africa, they call it Zamazama, and it's a big issue in South Africa. You talk to the Minister for Mines in South Africa, you admit that illegal small-scale mining is such a big issue for them. So, yes, I agree with the Honorable Member's assessment of the fact that you will have people in your own party and in chiefs and so on and so forth trying to frustrate the situation. But I want to give a firm assurance that I'm very clear in my mind that if I get the approval from this House, I am moving in there, and I'm not just talking, I'm moving in there to, in all humility and modesty, apply the law without fear or favor. That if I don't do that, I will set myself for failure. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the second question has to do with my people, and possibly the whole Ghana. There have been serious agitations among the people of the Greater Accra region that, unfortunately, being the capital of the country, government has encumbered a lot of their lands for the public good. Over the period, these projects elapse or government do not have use of these lands again. But instead of the lands reverting to the alluvial owners, government officials, public officials end up appropriating these lands and selling them to people, sometimes even foreigners, without recourse to the alluvial owners of those lands. What are you going to do to ensure that the policy that was embarked upon by the late President Mills, continued under President Mahama, would be continued, that those lands which were taken for the public good and government have no use for them again are reverted to the alluvial owners?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, yes, it's a major issue in our country. In fact, I should say that since my nomination and my announcement, and even before appearing before this vetting committee, I've also received a lot of delegations from my chiefs, my chiefs from the Savannah region, talking about this land and that land and the fact that land should be reverted to them and so on and so forth. So it's a major issue. But Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I think this is a very important public issue, which I'll seek your permission to try and explain a little bit so that the issues will be set straight. Mr. Chairman, the matters, the category of lands which are normally the subject matter of reversion, I will classify them under five different categories of lands. We're talking about lands which were compulsorily acquired before the promulgation of the 1992 Constitution. 2, we're talking about lands which were compulsorily acquired, but for which compensation was paid. We are talking about leaseholds, which the government is the lessee. The government acquired land from families or clans or schemes. Good. Number 3. Third, we are talking about vested lands. And fourthly, we are talking about lands, fifthly, we're talking about lands which were compulsorily acquired, but for which compensation was paid, but were acquired for stated purposes, which stated purposes are no longer the purposes for which the lands are being deployed. Mr. Chairman, when it comes to vested lands, I've already indicated that Act 1036 seems to have resolved that, which is that if I get the approval of this House, 6 months from 23rd December 2020, that is 23rd June 2021, I should be expecting a recommendation from the Lands Commission on specific vested lands and the various recommendations they will give for me to forward to head of state for action. So that is number 1. Number 2, the lands that are acquired for which compensation has been paid, for which compensation has not been paid, we need to look at paying compensation. I mean, and the Constitution is clear that compensation must be adequate, it must be prompt, and it must be fair. And there is a new culture which is evolving, which is that where you cannot pay with money, you can have some arrangement with the chiefs in order for them to take some of the lands as in lieu of compensation. And then you come to leasehold. Leasehold is not a difficult one. When the lease expires, the lessor or the grantor will determine whether to extend the lease or to have his or her land back. The real, and of course, when it comes to lands compulsorily acquired before the 1992 Constitution, in the case of Okudzeto Ablakwa versus the Attorney General, it was clear, it was determined that that provision of Article 20 does not apply to lands which were acquired before, compulsorily acquired before the 1992. The thorny one, the real difficult one, the big elephant in the room, has to do with the lands which have been acquired, compensation is paid, but the lands have not been used for the stated purposes for which the lands were acquired. Mr. Chairman, on that score, I will respectfully crave your indulgence to allow me to also point out some of the decisions of the Supreme Court of our country. I first will refer to the case of Obitete Churu III and Attorney General, 2010 Supreme Court of Ghana Law Report at page 904, where the Supreme Court held, Mr. Chairman, quote, once the use to which the land is not to be put is not restricted to any personal or individual interest, but one to which the general public will have a benefit, or the benefits of the project will inure to the entire country, either directly or indirectly, the public interest purpose will be deemed to have been adequately catered for, end quote. So the import of this ruling is that even where land is acquired, compensation has been paid, the stated purpose for which the land is acquired is no longer the purpose for which the land will be used. If it will be used for a purpose which will inure to the benefit of the people, the requirement of stated purpose, stated public purpose, is satisfied. Mr. Chairman, in fact, in the case of Okujeto Ablakwa versus Attorney General and Obichebi Lamti, number 2, 2012, 2 Supreme Court of Ghana Law Report at page 845. The Supreme Court even went a step further. And the Supreme Court, per the respected judge, Brobe JSC, reasoned as follows and held as follows, quote,
Mr. Chairman, without rudely interrupting him, the way the nominee wants to elaborately answer a question, we may do 24 hours here on him alone. So if he can restrict the answers. No, it's not that I don't want good answers, but I understand he wants to elaborately make reference to ruling. It's good to answer questions, but if he answers them this way, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, we are likely not to be able to vet more than him alone today. So if Mr. Chairman could guide him.
Thank you for alerting us. Honourable Member, please be guided.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm fully guided. I'm fully guided.
More follow-up.
Yes, I'm fully guided, but I'll just respectfully, Leader, to say that I'm sorry, the issue of compulsory acquisition of lands and whether or not they should be returned to the original owner is a major issue. Even before I'm being vetted and before I'm being sworn in, hopefully, it's a lot of requests from all over the country. So I just thought that it's important.
But Honour Chairman, with your indulgence, Honourable Nominee, just hold it there. We've heard those cases you cited, but as guided by Chairman and the Honourable Whip, brevity should be the way. As for the references you have done, we'll read them thoroughly ourselves. But come back to compulsory acquisition. Go to Article 20, just your last words, and then contextualize it within subsection 5 and 6 of Article 20, not just the Supreme Court ruling. Chairman, with your indulgence, no property or any description or interest in or right over any property shall be compulsorily taken possession of or acquired by the state unless the following conditions are satisfied. So minimum, you have some conditions you must satisfy. Now, just the words you use, read what 5 and 6 says and give us an assurance to what Honorable Nilante wants from you. Any property compulsorily taken possession of or acquired in the public interest or for a public purpose shall be used only in the public interest or for that public purpose. We have seen people go for these lands, then use them for other purposes other than this. So first is what will you do about that category of land? Then the 6th, Chairman, where the property is not used in the public interest or for the purpose for which it was acquired, the owner of the property immediately before the compulsory acquisition shall be given the first option for acquiring the property. So take, for instance, Ghana lands or lands within the Greater Accra region. The state acquired it in the public interest. The state is not using it for the public interest. The chiefs are saying that respect the provisions of Article 26 and let it revert back to us. Will you do that if you become minister? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, with the greatest of respect, if you will indulge me to just read the decision of the Supreme Court, it's just a paragraph. No, because otherwise I'll be misconstrued. I'm absolutely not against reverting compulsory acquired land to chiefs. I'm very much not against it. On the contrary, I want to promote it. But the point I'm making is that the Supreme Court had an occasion to interpret the provisions referred to by the Honorable Minority Leader. And the interpretation they put on them those were not my words respectfully, Mr. Chairman. Broby, speaking for the court, said the first point may be made on these provisions in that this court has, by a majority decision of 4-3, decided that Article 25 and 6 do not apply to the lands acquired compulsorily before the coming into force of the 1992 Constitution. It goes on and on. And it goes on to say the plaintiffs contended that the property should be retained for the purpose for which it was originally acquired. That will mean that defendant was to, that will mean that will be by the minister or any public officer. The grant to the second defendant was to develop the property into 3 blocks of flats of at least 4 stories. Which of the 2 uses will benefit the public more or satisfy the public purpose as required by the constitutional provisions? In the light of the explanations of the 2 expressions in 32 case referred above, I take the view that the use to which the Lands Commission directed the second defendant to put the land will serve public interest or will be for public purpose. So, Mr. Chairman, the Supreme Court seems to have, they've given a settlement on this. But
that was your third question. That was your second question. Very well.
Honorable nominee, from your explanation, which I will say I won't hold you to it because you are not a member of the bench at that time. But let me say, don't you think this is the reason why politicians over the years have used their political positions to take over set lands for their personal use, commercial use? Why should a politician take a land that belongs to a family, it's 2, and build apartments for his personal use?
Honorable Nilante,
Yes.
There's no evidence before this committee that politicians...
I'm not hearing you, Chairman, because they are making noise about it.
There's no evidence before
Please, can you
this
shout?
committee...
Chairman is speaking.
There's no evidence before this committee that politicians are taking over public lands.
Okay, public officials.
So
Public
can you
officials.
rephrase your question?
Chairman, there are a lot of evidence. Chairman, I can give you evidence of this.
Well,
No, the
you
issue
put it in
is
the appropriate
it's a
forum
legitimate
and
issue.
it's verified.
Please, it's a
And
legitimate issue. This is a concern of my constituents.
Honorable...
Please, this is a concern of my... Please, Mutaka.
Nilamte, I'm saying that you're tagging politicians as taking over public lands. I'm not aware of any such thing. If there's anything you find wrong anywhere, you know where to go. But please don't put the words in the mouth of the nominee. Ask questions that relate to the issue.
Okay. Let me give you an example, perfect example. The Dowenya irrigation lands, which government, since the days of Achampon, took for agri purposes, today is being used as estate developing and all those. Or let me say, to the detriment of the alluvial owners of that property. What do we do to resolve such problems?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to conclude on this matter by indicating that Article 257 of the Constitution vests all public lands in the President. Again, Article 258, subclause 2, gives the President the constitutional mandate to direct the Lands Commission. So, on a case-by-case basis, in spite of the decisions of the Supreme Court, if the President, as a trustee for public lands, takes the position that public land, certain lands which were compulsorily acquired, be reverted or be given back to the alluvial owners, there will be no constitutional or legal bar. And indeed, I do know that sometime last year, the president met with chiefs from Accra and assured them that hopefully in the second term, there will be a mechanism, a framework, within which their grievances will be heard and possibly resolved. And if I get a nod of this committee, I want to make a firm assurance that pursuant to the vision and goal of the president, we will do that. But I respectfully say that we have to do that on a case-by-case basis, where the justice demands that lands be reverted to the allodial owners. We will do that. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a vote.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Samuel Abdullah Jinapor, congratulations. It's a gentleman in whom I'm very well pleased. And then it's a brother in whom I'm very well pleased. And I'm very satisfied with your accomplishments and your responses so far. Honorable Chairman, I'm riding on the Article 2573 that the Honorable Minority released regarding the vesting of some lands in the three northern regions previously, before the creation of Savannah and of East regions. Now, I have also done some work on some of these vested lands. Clearly, 1 kilometer square around the Winneba roundabout is vested land. That is on record. Koforidua lands are vested lands. Sunyani lands are vested lands. But the particular vested lands in the three northern regions are not known. So there's a confusion whether they are compulsorily acquired or they are vested land. And I take very good inspiration from the provision that you mentioned in the New Lands Act, that all vested lands would more or less be consolidated and a register will be made. I want you to give assurance to this committee and the people of the three northern regions in particular that this exercise will be carried out with alacrity and dispatch. Thank you very much, sir.
Remember that the northern regions are more than 3.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I will not pretend to have all the answers here. If I get the approval of this House, I want to assure my good friend, the MP for Bushegu, that it's a matter that I will look at very seriously. Thank you.
Very well. Watching it. Okay, I got that. I'm going back there.
Honorable nominee, congratulations. My first major concern has to do with the felling of the share tree in the northern ecological zone. This tree is an economic tree, but in recent times, that tree has been felled, time without number, for charcoal burning, plus the destruction that is being caused to the rosewood tree species, which is categorized as an endangered tree species. Honorable nominee, if you're given the nod, what would you do to protect the shade tree and our precious rosewood, which is endangered?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if I may begin with rosewood. Ghana is a party, a state party to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. And the convention is such that there are 3 categorizations of species. They categorize them in Appendix 1, Appendix 2, and Appendix 3. If a species is placed in Appendix 1, it means that
that species cannot be harvested, traded in, or exported at all. If a species is placed in Appendix 2, it means that the species can be traded in, but in a regulated framework. And if a species is placed in Appendix 3, it means the species can be harvested, traded, and exported freely. Rosewood is placed in Appendix 2, which means the government of Ghana can allow the harvesting, trading, and exportation of rosewood in a regulated fashion. The government of the day felt that the rate at which rosewood was being harvested was not sustainable, and therefore the government put a temporary ban on the harvesting, trading in, and exportation of this species. So this is where we are. There's a ban. There's a ban on the harvesting and trading in and exportation of this species. Now, Mr. Chairman, what do we do? I will, if I get the nod, I certainly will be advised by the Forestry Commission properly, and out of which we can fashion out a policy to be able to deal with this situation. But there are 2 or 3 matters we cannot escape, Mr. Chairman. One is that we need to deal with the enforcement regime, because even while the ban is in place, we are all very much aware that there is some illicit harvesting and trading and exportation of rosewood today, even though there's a ban. So the whole enforcement regime has to be looked at and looked at carefully. 2, I think the Forestry Commission almost immediately will have to conduct an audit which will establish the stocks of this species in the forest. How many species do we have? How many rosewood do we have in the forest? I think that will help. And number 3, I also think that if there's ever going to be the lifting of the ban, we must have a relationship between plantation and harvesting. We cannot just go on with harvesting. We need to have a plantation scheme which will assure us that the harvesting, trading, and exportation of rosewood will be sustainable. And finally, I will say that we need to also have a regime for value addition, because the experts tell me that the more you add value to the wood, the less the harvesting will be. Because if you don't add value, it means that they just fell the trees and they export them. So, Mr. Chairman, on rosewood, this is what I think we can do. The issue of Share 3, I'm aware that the Green Climate Fund, in collaboration with the Forestry Commission and the Global Share Alliance and UNDP, have a grant which they are going to spend for purposes of promoting the plantation of share and the protection of share. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nominee. You have already touched on illegal mining, but I'd want to be very specific. And this particular question is one that relates to happenings in your own backyard. And I'm talking about dollar power. There's a lot of illegal mining going on there. And in fact, the mining activities are concentrated in a forest reserve, which is meant to give some protective cover to the Bui hydro power plant in that area. If you're given the nod, what would you do to ensure that illegal mining in the forest reserve around the Dollar Power area is stopped? And this is very important because it has even resulted in a boundary dispute between Ghana and La Côte d'Ivoire, which recently resulted in the capture of a Ghanaian citizen who is languishing in an Ivorian prison. So what would you do?
Mr. Chairman, very important steps we have to take. This town, the Honorable Member has mentioned, essentially the briefing I have is that it's an enclave between the borders of Ghana and La Côte d'Ivoire. And
the town is essentially ungovernable. There's no government control, number one. There are absolutely no access at all to this town. So it's almost like a jungle, if you want. And fortunately or unfortunately, the area seems to have large deposits of gold. And so Ivorians come in, Ghanaians from the Savannah region and the Northern region and other parts of the country troop in there on motorbikes to engage in illegal small-scale mining. I think the first thing we have to do, and I know the Ministry of National Security is very much on top of this, the first thing we have to do is to ensure that the government of Ghana has some grip on that area. There are issues of where our boundaries begin and where they end and so on and so forth. The Boundaries Commission is very active in that. And so my view would be that the governmental control, the state control of that area will be most important. Number two, I think we need to find a way of ensuring access roads to this particular enclave. And thirdly, if we can fashion out some form of community mining in that area, which will rope in the people who are engaged in illegal mining so that we can sanitize that environment and make sure that it doesn't become the situation that it is. As it stands now, it even has national security implications, I would think.
Yes, that leads me to my next question, and you have already briefly talked about the Ghana Boundary Commission as one body which needs to be proactive to resolve the problems we have around the dollar power area. But now, what, in your view, what is your view with respect to, first of all, the placement of the Ghana Boundary Commission under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources that you would be heading, given the multi-sectorial functions of that commission? Some of the functions includes delimiting our land boundaries and demarcating them, as well as delimiting our maritime boundaries, etc. Should that commission be placed under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources?
Mr. Chairman, the work of the Ghana Boundaries Commission will appear to be quite a complex one. The Ghana Boundaries Commission's mandate essentially is to determine, negotiate, and/or delineate the boundaries of Ghana as they relate to Ghana and its and neighboring countries. So that's the mandate of the Ghana Boundaries Commission. Where does the borders of Ghana begin? Where do they end? That is essentially their work, both on land and on our seas. Now, they do so for purposes of, one, determining the landmass of Ghana. So this is why it is under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Number two, they do so also in the sea to determine the natural resources of our country. And I have the act here, the Ghana Boundaries Commission Act, Act 795, where there is a detailed spell out of the objects of the commission, the functions of the commission. So I think that the placement of the Ghana Boundaries Commission under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources is perfect. It's absolutely normal. There's nothing wrong, because they are dealing with the lands of Ghana as well as the natural resources of Ghana in the sea. Now, Mr. Chairman, I recognize that my good friend, the Honorable Agaga, being a former Deputy Minister for Interior, is fully aware, and I'm also aware, of the ongoing discussion about the potential conflict between the mandate of the Ghana Immigration, of the Ghana Immigration Service and the Ghana Boundaries Commission. But I don't see any conflict at all. To my mind, I respectfully think that the Ghana Boundaries Commission's mandate is exclusively for purposes of determining what are the borders of Ghana? Whereas the Ghana Immigration Service, their mandate is border security, protecting the borders of Ghana. So a situation may even arise where the Ghana Immigration Service is unsure of where the borders of Ghana begins and ends for purposes of protecting the borders, where they will knock on the doors.
Excuse me. Did you say the immigration service is to protect the borders of Ghana? Is it that the military? Immigration is to deal with people who are entering and leaving Ghana.
That may be another way of putting it. I mean, I think it's a clearer way of putting it, which is the issues of immigration, people coming in and out. But they need a definite determination of the borders of the country in order to be able to tell whether somebody is entered into Ghana or somebody is outside Ghana. So this is where the relationship arises. The relationship arises between the Ghana Boundaries Commission and the Ghana Immigration Service. For the Ghana Boundaries Commission, it relates to where do we end? Where do we determine the borders of Ghana? The Ghana Immigration Service will then also be. But I agree with the Honorable Member. There is an ongoing reform work which will result in the Minister for Interior having a seat on the commission of the Ghana Boundaries Commission, so that he will also from the outset have input as to how the events are unfolded there. Thank you.
Last follow-up question. Given the functions of the commission, one would have expected that this particular commission, the Ghana Boundary Commission, would have been proactive to forestall conflict between Ghana and its neighbors. So our maritime boundary largely will have to be determined by the ITLOs. What that simply tells me is that the Commission, to a large extent, has not been very efficient in the discharge of its mandate. If given the nod, what would you do to ensure that that Commission is effective and efficient in the discharge of its mandate?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the Commission was first established as far back as the year 1970. It was not operationalized until the year 2010, when this dispute arose between Ghana and the Republic of La Côte d'Ivoire, which then resulted in the operationalization of the Ghana Boundaries Commission. There's a lot that we can do. There is a Brigadier General who is heading it, and whom I find extremely up to the task. But there's a lot of work that I think they can do for the country, and the responsibilities they have are enormous. So I can give that assurance that given the opportunity, I will keep a close eye on them.
Okay, you're done. Yes, is it Okankwe Central?
Rightly so, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Minister-Designate, let's move into some practical areas. I think members know you're a lawyer, so everybody seems to be asking you legal questions, and that ministry has a lot of legal issues to be dealt with. Let's look at Act 547, that is the Timber Resources Management Act. Very well. And it deals with the Timber Resources Management Act. That's the Timber Resources Management Act. And its ensuing legislation, that is regulation, that is LI 2254 on the Timber Resources Management Legality Licensing Regulations. This House has approved or ratified over 300 86 has granted 386 timber rights as at September 2020. And the law requires that those rights ought to be given some approvals by this House. So you have only 54 out of the 386 that has gone through this process of ratification through this House. And a study by the European Union suggests that they are going to stop timber that goes into the European Union from our part of the world. When approved, God willing, you have over 332 of such rights outstanding. What are you going to do immediately to them to get them ratified by this House?
Mr. Chairman, I have already indicated that the provisions of the Constitution relating to ratification is for a very important consideration, which is that the matters is raised, timber, gold, land, all of the minerals and natural resources of our country are for the Ghanaian people, and Parliament must have an important role in the utilization and management of the lands and natural resources of our country. So I think we have to look at the administrative mechanism. I haven't had the opportunity to go to the ministry yet, but I can almost bet, and I'm quite certain that the issues will do with bureaucratic inertia and the processes leading to the presentation of these grants to Parliament for ratification. So the assurance I can give to the committee is that we need to examine or interrogate the processes and protocols leading to the presentation of these grants to Parliament. And I will give that assurance. Thank you. I give that assurance.
Very well. Thank you. My second question is on the minerals and mining local content and local participation regulation of 2020, which we passed last year. It's very similar to the local content law in the petroleum sector. It's supposed to help create a lot of job opportunities for our locals. Do you have a copy?
I do.
Okay. Very well. So you are talking about the localization program, recruitment of expatriates, employment and training of Ghanaians, procurement and of local products. Your procurement list have to be put on the website and what have you. It's supposed to create job opportunities, and your sector can be a very good sector to create a lot of job opportunities in line with our party's manifesto. I want you to give an assurance to this House that you are going to ensure the actualization of these regulations to create the necessary jobs for our people within the mining subsector. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think it's a very important question that has been asked. The previous legislation which dealt with local content, LI 21 as Heaven 3, we all came to the conclusion that was inadequate. And therefore, this new LI was promulgated, LI 2431. My attitude is simple. If I get the nod, I think what we have to do is to vigorously enforce the provisions of LI 2431. This LI is less than a year old. The LI 2173 compared to LI 2204 in the petroleum sector, we all came to the firm conclusion, and Parliament has made a strong intervention by passing LI 2431. So my answer is simple. I mean, if I get the recommendation of this House and I get the approval of this, whatever it takes to enforce this airline, we have to enforce it and enforce it to the letter. Because the problem has always been, Mr. Chairman, and let's face it, the problem has been that you will have the airlines, you will have the regulations, you will have the laws, but for some reason, the regulations don't get enforced. And some of the figures I have actually examined, if we are able to implement this airline even to 70%, you can imagine the cascading effect it will have for Ghanaian indigenous companies. And a lot of the resources in the mining sector will be retained right here in Ghana. So my answer will be that we should enforce the airline and enforce it forcefully.
And that leads me to the last question. I believe you have the power to go after Ghanaians who want to go and hide behind expatriates to take cover under the regulation. GIDEC. The president set up GIDEC, the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Bauxite Authority. You recall last year, with an enabling legislation, the board is in place. We want to mine our bauxites. We've even used some for some barter arrangements. I know VACO now has become a subsidiary of GIDEC. What is your brief on this industrialization drive of the president, from VACO being a subsidiary of GIDEC and the whole chain that we seek to pursue? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the vision of the president to build here in Ghana an integrated aluminium industry is a noble one. I think for many, many years in Ghana, we have all talked about value addition to our minerals. We've all been very unhappy about the exportation of raw materials out of this country. And so the president, in his wisdom, found it necessary that the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation be established, which will be responsible or have the mandate of developing the full value chain of an integrated aluminium industry here in Ghana. Mr. Chairman, I'm sure we all are very much aware that you cannot industrialize your country if you don't have an aluminium integrated aluminium development industry in your country. Neither can you do so if you don't have an integrated iron and steel industry in your country. I mean, these are the twin efforts, twin pillars upon which industrialization can happen, that you can build cars, you can build ships, and so on and so forth. So the vision of the president, I think, is one which is highly commendable. The Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation has been established. The office has been established as well. They have done a lot of work already. The issues of holding VALCO as a subsidiary of the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation is all part of the program or the strategy to enhance the asset of the Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation in order for them to participate in the international market by attracting investors into our country. Not just that, the Ghana Bauxite Company also, Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation has been given 20% of their shares. I think all of those are part of the strategies and the mechanisms to shore up their assets so that they can participate well in the international market. Thank you.
Sohini, yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I was caught off guard, but let me welcome the nominee, first of all, with the issue of Galamsey. It's come up already, but this was a fight that His Excellency the President put his presidency on the line for. Said he did not mind losing the presidency as a result of his commitment to this fight. We deployed a lot of army men, police officers, even lost some of them, voted so much money into this fight, destroyed machines, lost some, allegedly stole some. And Asamria, did, his investigation revealing more things that were wrong with that whole fight. In the end, Honorable Nominee, the media got excited, formed a coalition to support this cause. At the end of it all, the President, after the fight, in his 2021 SONA address, seemed to have been humbled by the fight when he said, and I quote, "There's one subject I believe we the people need to have an open conversation, and that is the phenomenon of galamsey," unquote. What briefing have you received from the President who nominated you as regards this fight that seemed to have humbled him in relation to what is expected if you are approved as minister? What is expected of your role in this fight? What is going to be the approach?
Yes, so what's your briefing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to, first of all, respectfully submit that the work and the effort of President Akufo-Addo in his first term in relation to his policy and effort to sanitize the small-scale industry in our country is perhaps one of the most audacious and ambitious. And I will say that he ought to be commended. I think there is a president who came into office in 2017 and found that there was this problem, this existing problem. The issue and the problem of illegal small-scale mining got on the ascendancy from the 1990s, and it's been with us all this while. And the president took it upon himself to try and bring some sanity and some regulation in the small-scale mining industry. Mr. Chairman, when the president said that he put his presidency on the line for the fight against galamsey, or illegal small-scale mining, the president meant it, and the president indeed walked his talk. Chairman, he walked his talk, and with the greatest of respect, if one wants evidence of how the president walked his talk, Mr. Chairman, you should just go and take the results of the 2020 general elections. The president could have done otherwise. The president could have chosen to renege on his commitment to put his presidency on the line, and that could have changed the results as we've all seen. Any objective person, cursory examiner of the results would show that it is because the president indeed and in fact put his presidency on the line. That is why, even though he believed in the policies he implemented, it didn't turn out to be popular with some people. But that's what he meant by putting his presidency on the line. So he walked the talk. Mr. Chairman, having said that, I want to also say that moving forward, some efforts were made, a lot of efforts were made, and some achievements were chalked. In the first term of President Akufo-Addo in the fight against illegal small-scale mining, about 4,000 illegal small-scale miners were trained. The whole legal architecture regime today
which I find satisfactory for dealing with illegal small-scale mining, were put in place under President Akufo-Addo's first-term administration. Community mining, the concept of community mining, which is appearing to be the panacea for resolving the issue of illegal small-scale mining, has actually been put together and is very much in place. So, Mr. Chairman, I am not proceeding. If I get the favor of this committee and the approval of the House, I am never proceeding on the basis that whatever happened in the past was bad. No, I think we have to look upon it as what happened in the past. Those that were good, we move on with them. Those we have to review, those we have to perfect, we do so and we move forward. But having said that, Mr. Chairman, I think what the President meant in his message of the state of the nation last year by a national conversation was that we have gotten to a point where we require a bipartisan, broad-based, multi-sectorial effort in dealing with illegal small-scale mining. We need a broad-based support for the national policy on illegal small-scale mining. And Mr. What is the policy? The policy is that we build here in Ghana a sustainable, viable, regulated small-scale mining which has regard for the environment and do away with illegal small-scale mining which degrade the environment. And coincidentally, I've looked at the manifesto of the NDC. The 2020 manifesto of the NDC is very much in accord with this national policy. It says they frown upon illegal small-scale mining and they support legal small-scale mining. So I think we should come together as a people. We should all come together, both political parties.
Which one do you call illegal small-scale mining? The ones with heavy excavators? What is small-scale about them?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if you look at the Minerals and Mining Act, Act 703, and I've actually done a brief on it, illegal small-scale mining simply means, one, you don't have a license to mine. Two, even when you have a license to mine, you are not mining according to the protocols for illegal small-scale mining. Three, on the specific issue of excavators and excavating and the rest, the law, as it stands today, permits deep mining in respect of illegal small-scale mining, subject to the commitment that when you excavate and you dig a deep, you dig a pit. Within 30 days after excavation, you have to fill the pit and you have to plant. You have to vegetate. So the contours of legal small-scale mining permit a whole lot, but only that you do it within the confines of the law and regulations. So that is the national policy. And my contention.
Can I come in? To solve a problem, sometimes you need to show that you understand the cause of the problem. Can you explain why people engage in illegal small-scale mining?
Can I explain?
Yeah, why people engage in illegal small-scale mining?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't have all the answers here, but I can say that, one, the enforcement of the regulatory regime itself is a problem. And I'll give you an example.
Let's start with what is illegal small-scale mining, which you yourself said is mining without a license.
And many other.
Let's start from that one. Mining without a license. Why can't they just get licenses for those areas to mine, small-scale mining licenses? Why can't they just get that?
That is the explanation I'm trying to give. That's exactly the answer. So the answer is this, Mr. Chairman, with respect. If you say that illegal small-scale miners should acquire licenses before they mine, there is a community that my friend and brother, the Honorable Agalga alluded to, Bole. And you are expecting the illegal small-scale miner to travel all the way from Bole to Accra. He gets to Accra, he doesn't know where the Minerals Commission is. He finds his way to the Minerals Commission.
So one of your solutions will be that you will make sure that licenses can be acquired in the districts.
We have to do that.
But there are actually small-scale small-scale mining offices in the various districts. The country has been zoned by the Minerals Commission into districts. And in these zones, they actually do have district, small-scale mining officers that issue small-scale mining licenses. Second thing, people mine in concessions. There are minerals there. They want license. They cannot get license. And yet, there are minerals buried under the trees. How do you stop those people from going for those minerals under the trees? Secondly, at the Minerals Commission, they zone...
When you go, you just a follow-up, but you...
I'm not an available leader, and I must benefit from being an available leader. I get to ask uncountable questions as an available leader. It's not a privilege I ordinarily enjoy. Yes.
Mr. Chair, he is an available leader, but it doesn't come with all the privileges.
All I expect, if it's a follow-up question, then it must relate to the answer. But then you're taking advantage to go off the answer and asking new questions. That's my problem.
Chairman, there's something I want him to do. You're in a hurry to get me out of the seat. Well, the issue is that I just think that to deal with the problem of illegal small-scale mining, you just look at the causes of illegal small-scale mining and have a roadmap in terms of it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons. And that becomes yours. Because Swin is asking you, what will you do differently to address the issue of illegal small-scale mining, which we call galamsey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, very straight away, I think we need to pursue this concept of community mining. I think it's very important. I've looked at the literature. I've taken a lot of briefings. I've examined the situation, and I'm more than fully persuaded that the perfection and ramping up of community mining in our country will go a long way in dealing with the incidences of illegal small-scale mining. You are very right, Honorable Ayaraga. You are extremely right that reforms in the Minerals Commission itself is completely important. I mean, it's a sine qua non. We need to reform the Minerals Commission in terms of its operations. I don't by any means suggest that the Minerals Commission has not done any good job. They've done their best in the circumstances, but I think the next phase of our efforts should be about how we are going to reform the operations and services of the Minerals Commission so that their services will be readily available, and also for us to promote community mining. And finally, Mr. Chairman, it's also that we need that broad-based support. We need the support of the chiefs. We need the support of the local authorities. I would think we need the support of the miners. And if I get the approval of this House, I intend to visit mining communities myself as minister, leading the Ministry of Lands and Resources, to engage all the actors and stakeholders, and so that we can construct broad-based coalition and support around this national policy of a viable, sustainable, lawful, regulated small-scale mining in Ghana.
That's another small point. At the Minerals Commission, when you talk about community mining, and that's what you will do. When the communities go to the Minerals Commission, they find out that the entire community has already been plotted and concessioned out to some investor who never shows up. But on paper, that area is encumbered. What do you expect the community to do?
In those kinds of situations, Mr. Chairman, it will mean that by the grace of God, if I get the opportunity, I have to show leadership. We cannot allow that to happen. We don't have to permit that. In fact, there's even been the talk about the state itself taking up exploration for purposes of granting concessions for small-scale mining. Yes, we are right. And that I don't make any pretense about. We need to shake a few things, and God willing, I intend to do that.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I just would like to note that that was my first question, so that
I acknowledge that.
it doesn't look like my session has dragged because I have been asking questions. But a quick follow-up to the answer given to my question. Honorable nominee, don't you think that the President's humbling request for us to have a conversation about this phenomenon after 4 years of the commitment that you speak of, and the decision to disband the interministerial committee is an admission of failure with the plan that was initially used?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'm unable to understand or appreciate the adjective humbling. I'm not too sure about what that means. I've said that already, and I will repeat it, that the call by the President was apt, was appropriate, and I believe that it was on the back of the needless politicization of illegal small-scale mining in our country, where in many cases, when a particular political party in government makes attempts to resolve, sanitize the small-scale mining industry, the opponent of the government, depending on who is in opposition, will very quickly find a way of scoring political points out of it. I believe it is in that spirit that the President felt that it's about time for us to depoliticize this sector of small-scale mining. For we should face it, Mr. Chairman, it's indeed a national problem. All right. When you go to mining communities, there are people who are suffering from health hazards. Some of them are getting borrelial ulcers as a result of mercury, the use of mercury in mining. Mr. Chairman, you go to mining communities and environments are degraded, climate change is becoming a problem, and so on and so forth. And that is the spirit in which the President asked that we should have a national conversation around it, so that we can have, as I said, that broad-based support for the fight against illegal mining in our country. By all measures, I want to repeat and I want to insist that in all humility and modesty, the effort of President Akufo-Addo in his first term in dealing with illegal small-scale mining is unprecedented. I'm not too sure in the Fourth Republic there's ever been any government which has taken on this fight in a manner that he did. He ought to be commended, and I think that it was a courageous, bold step that he took. I don't find anything as a failure about it. There were a lot of successes chalked. There were challenges in respect of illegal small-scale mining in our country. And finally, the dissolution of the Interministerial Committee on illegal mining really has nothing to do with failure or... Honorable. Yeah, it has nothing to do with failure. The government sets up committee for purposes of its first term. In the second term, they believe that they will use other means in resolving those issues.
All right, that's fine. Mr. Chairman, let me invite the nominee to the issue of land ownership and security of title. Seem to be one of the concerns that many people have with our land management system. In 2008, through LAP, we were able to at least consolidate 4 institutions into the Land Commission, the National Land Commission. But I think the 7th Parliament also successfully passed the land law that sought to consolidate a number of different acts governing land management in this country. But the issues that still remain are turnaround time for processing land, customer feedback, and corruption and bribery at some of the institutions responsible for, facilitating and assuring security of title and supporting land ownership. What will you do as minister to improve the turnaround time for processing land, ensure that the institution's customer feedback, is improved, and check bribery and corruption that militate against the efficiency of these institutions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the honorable member is very right. A lot of people have so many difficulties in land administration in Ghana. I know that successive administrations have done their bit. We still have a situation which is quite unacceptable, and the president's vision for land administration in Ghana is to arrive at a situation where land becomes a catalyst or a contributor to national development and economic growth as opposed to an inhibition. And so whatever we have to do to perfect land administration in Ghana will be extremely important. I know people who have bought land and they paid good money and they are unable to plot those lands, multiple sales, fraud in the land system, and many other difficulties. Mr. Chairman, in the first term administration of President Akufo-Addo, I know that Lab 1, Lab 2, which is the land administration scheme, 1 and 2, which was done in conjunction with the World Bank, did resolve some of the issues. At this stage, I think what we have to do is to roll out a program which will digitize the records of the Lands Commission. For me, I think that is absolutely non-negotiable. And I do know that the Lands Commission itself has piloted the digitization of the records of the administration of lands in Ghana. We need to move on with that, and we need to do that forcefully. We are told that we need to involve private sector participation. So the issues of value for money, we have to look at all of that. And ultimately, we get to the situation where land administration and all the records of the Lands Commission are digitized, and so that people can access the services of the Lands Commission with ease. And finally, I think in many cases, the front end of the Lands Commission tends to be perfect. I mean, you go to the Lands Commission and you are in an air-conditioned room, they serve you water, they receive you well, you put in your application, and when it goes to the back end, it becomes business as usual. So we need to tackle both the front end and the back end. But I can assure this committee that if I get the approval, it is a matter that I'll look at carefully. Thank you.
Now, honorable nominee, finally, Ramsey sites. The one that comes to mind immediately is the Sakumono area, where real estate companies are encroaching upon those areas. Our forest cover is at risk across the country. Rosewood is being exploited crudely. Our shea trees are under threat. And all these contribute especially to rural poverty. What is your understanding of the problem with these, with these things in the forest sector? Maybe Ramsey site aside. I know it's a multi-dimensional question, but I believe that you can deal with it. What is your approach? What is going to be your approach to dealing with these concerns? Ramsey sites, our forest cover that are being crudely exploited, especially rosewood and our shea trees that contribute to rural poverty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think the question relating to rosewood and shea, if I recall, I think I've given an answer. So I will rely on my past answer. Mr. Chairman, on the issue of
forest cover and afforestation. That obviously, the honorable member is right. That is a major issue. And that is going to be a big assignment that if I get approval of this House, I will have to make sure that we deal with. Forest plantation scheme 2016-2040. The government of Ghana planted 101.9 million trees. About 70 hectares of area was planted. About 16,180 hectares was done. A whole lot was done under the first term. But I believe that we've gotten to the point where if this committee were to recommend me and I'm approved by the House, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to roll out an aggressive afforestation scheme. An afforestation scheme which will not look at tinkling, which will not look at small interventions, but which will ensure that we aggressively roll out a program of afforestation. Mr. Chairman, it has been reported that Ethiopia, for instance, in a day, Ethiopia is supposed to have planted 350 million trees, led by the president of Ethiopia, and 19 million Ethiopians were involved. I think in our country, Ghana, I'm looking forward to having the opportunity, and if I got the opportunity, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources should be able to come up with a program where once in a year, and preferably on June 5th, which is the World Environment Day, the President of our Republic will lead a planting exercise. The President will plant a tree. Hopefully His Majesty Asantehene Otumfuo will plant a tree. Hopefully His Majesty the Yana will plant a tree. And Mr. Chairman himself will also plant a tree here in Parliament. And about, say, 5 million Ghanaians will plant trees. But not just the planting of the trees, Mr. Chairman. The planting of the trees is one thing, but seeing to the growth of the trees to maturity is another. And so the program must contemplate the situation where we are going to ensure that we plant and we see to the growth of the trees. And finally, I should say that we should not just plant trees, we should plant economic trees. So we are here discussing share nut, we are here discussing share trees, rosewood, and the rest. So the trees we are planting should be economic trees, share trees, timber, wawa, and so on and so forth. And therefore, it becomes an investment. So my thinking about the afforestation program of this country.
Okay, it's 2 o'clock, 2 hours. Suspend sitting for 10 minutes.
The question of trees in farms. I'm aware that there's a program which has been rolled out titled Trees on Farm, and mainly planting 18 to 21 trees within cocoa farms, farm planting, and already I'm informed that about 329,404 hectares have been done. I will continue with that. Thank you.
Sorry. Finally, I'm very much concerned about the relationship between MESTI and your ministry. When giving them no, you know that we can not only collaborate to resolve environmental challenges with natural resources, but to attain the objectives of the Paris Agreement. What would you do to ensure that we have a very good collaboration between MESTI and MESTI is the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology, and your ministry? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think conceptually, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and that of Environment ought to work hand in glove. I think these are the two ministries who should collaborate more than any other ministries, because the objectives of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources through the Forestry Commission and the objectives of the Ministry of Environment through the Environmental Protection Agency are intricately linked. And so, given the opportunity, I want to assure my auntie, the Honorable MP, that whatever I will do to ensure that there is that synergy, that close collaboration between the Forestry Commission, the Mining Commission, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources itself, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Ministry of Environment, I will do exactly that. Fortunately for me, Professor Frimpong Boateng, who was the Minister for Environment, was like an uncle to me. And I've been fortunate also for the President to appoint the new Minister for Environment, Dr. Kwaku Afriye, who is equally like an uncle. I worked with him at the presidency, and we have such a cordial working relationship. So please be rest assured, whatever I will do if I get the opportunity to ensure that there is close collaboration between Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and the Ministry of Environment, I will do that.
Very well. Eric.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, bauxite mining is especially damaging to the forest. You know the Jamaican experience. The deforestation in Jamaica is attributed to bauxite mining because Jamaica is one of the largest producers of bauxite in the world. Ghanaian environmentalists fear that the 23,000 hectare Atiwa Forest Reserve in the eastern region will be under threat of deforestation after government concluded the $2 billion resource for roads deal with China. Can you assuage the fears of Ghanaians that this reserve will not be degraded after the execution of the project?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the President of our country is the co-chair of the United Nations Secretary General's Committee of Eminent Advocates. And so matters of environmental preservation are absolutely primordial when it comes to President Akufo-Addo. Whatever we will do to ensure that the Atiwa forest is not unnecessarily degraded, I want to assure the committee we will do that. Wherever you have an extractive industry, the balance between exploiting your natural resources and preserving the environment has always been a very delicate one. But what I do know is that the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation has a green unit under their secretariat, which is specifically paying attention to issues of Atiwa forest. Atiwa forest and other forest reserves which may be impacted by the work of the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation. So I can give that assurance that if I get the opportunity, it's a matter that I will have a keen interest in. I'm told, for instance, that they are attempting to do what they call a biodiversity baseline assessment, which will result in them being able to preserve some of the flora and fauna in the Atiwa forest. So I can assure you.
The Chairman, my second question. In 2018, Mr. Mafaida Dat, head of Climate Investment Fund of the World Bank, indicated that Ghana has lost half of its forests since the year 2000. He added that Ghana is losing forests at 2% rate per year, and projected that if that continues, Ghana will soon join the 4 countries in the world without forests. In 2019, Global Forest Watch used updated remote sensing and satellite data from the University of Maryland and estimated that there was a 60% increase in Ghana's primary rainforest loss in 2018 compared to 2017. This is the highest in the world. What concrete measures can you put in place to check this rate of degradation of our forest cover?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think we can tackle a matter like this through a multifaceted approach. Clearly, the enforcement of the laws relating to the preservation of the environment will be key, because, Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Member talks about degradation. So we're talking about the felling of trees, the harvesting of trees, but there are laws, there are copious, comprehensive legal regime, enforcement regime in respect of how we harvest trees in our country and so on and so on. So we need to strengthen that. We need to examine what enforcement regimes we have. The issues of personnel, the issues of the protocols, the issues of monitoring, and all of that. We need to do that. And also, I've talked about this aggressive afforestation. I think that will also help. If we're able to also get a grip on illegal small-scale mining, that will also help with the degradation, the prevention of the degradation of the environment. Thank you.
Next question. Urbanization, industrialization, and increased population are the 3 major factors exerting enormous pressure on the use of land. Ghana, use of land is not properly regulated. And if we are not careful, the upcoming generation will have no option than to blame us for not putting in place the necessary mechanisms to ensure judicious use of land, because land is fixed and limited in supply. What do you think must be done to ensure proper use of land in Ghana?
Mr. Chairman, on a matter like this, I think I will respectfully defer it to the experts and assure the committee that, given the opportunity, I will look forward to proper expert advice from the Lands Commission and from Parliament itself as well. And hopefully, we should be able to come up with a strategy to resolve an issue like that. Thank you.
Very well. My chambers has asked to be. Yes. Yes, Mr. Garnet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, the resource curse theory, or what is commonly referred to, paradox of plenty. There's been a lot of research. I can think of Dr. Ellis Danso's book on mineral resource governance. I can think of my own research at the University of Webster. I want to limit it to how people living in the mining areas are living in abject poverty, even though they bear the brunt of the environmental hazard. What are you going to do for people living in mining communities when you are giving them out? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, quite clearly, if I get the opportunity, hopefully and God willing, I obviously should be knocking on the door of my my honorable colleague, because it will appear that she's an authority when it comes to these matters. So, madam, when I knock on your door, please open me and then assist me, so that we will be able to put all the issues together for the benefit of our country. But I can just say quickly 2 things. The Mineral Development Fund, Madam, Mr. Chairman, the Mineral Development Fund the architecture of the Mineral Development Fund and the disbursement, the efficient utilization of the 20% accruals from the Minerals Income Investment Fund to the Mineral Development Fund. The proper utilization of those funds, I believe, can help communities. And I believe it's something that we have to pay particular attention to. So in addition to coming to knock on the door of the Honorable Member for Assistance, I think the effective implementation of the Mineral Development Fund will also help.
Very well. Honorable Piet.
Most grateful, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to revisit the matter related to our forest cover. And there are 4 reports here. The World Economic Forum, Ghana losing its rainforest faster than any other country in the world. This was May 2019 report. The Rainforest Trust, another report indicating that Ghana lost over half of its rainforest in 2018. This was also released in June 2019. The World Resources Institute is the 3rd report I have here. We said that Ghana lost its rainforest in 2018, the size of Belgium, the size of the European country, Belgium. To put the figure at some 3.6 million hectares of primary rainforest. Global Forest Watch is the 4th report, also decrying the rate of deforestation. So the preponderance of literature all confirming that at this rate we will have no forest cover. It's grim indeed, and it's very, very troubling. A lot of the policies that we have implemented, according to these reports, are not aggressive enough and are not yielding the right results. What would the nominee do differently by way of a new paradigm to avert the threat that all of these reputable institutions are warning our country about?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to first of all say that I will be most grateful if the Honorable Member for North Tongue will furnish me with these reports, because I believe that will be useful for my own understanding of the situation. But yes, I do know that there is a lot of depletion of our forest cover, but I must also put on record very forcefully that the experts will tell you again that the depletion of forest covers happen over a certain considerable period of time. And so I cited the example of Ethiopia, where we are told that the forest cover of Ethiopia some 5, 10, 20 years ago was about 40 to 60%, only for the forest cover to deplete over a period of time. So it will not take 2 years, 3 years to deplete your forest cover. I want us to respectfully put the situation in that context, that it will take many years of actions and inactions which will result in the depletion of your forest cover. So that is number one. Number two, we all have to recognize that as society grows and there's urbanization and there's a need for livelihoods through all kinds of methods, there's always a tendency for people to engage in illegal felling of trees and illegal mining and several other things which result in the depletion of a forest cover. But what we can do straight away, I think two very important things. A lot has been done already, I've mentioned that, but two critical issues that I believe we can roll out. One is safeguarding the forest we have now. And how do we safeguard the forest we have now? Which is ensuring that we look at the enforcement regime and enforce the rules and regulations forcefully. And finally, engaging in aggressive afforestation. You prevent the harvesting of the trees, you prevent the harvesting of the forest, at the same time you are planting. That is the only way we can be a sustainable situation in terms of the forest cover of our country.
A follow-up to that, Mr. Chairman, the World Economic Forum has some numbers as to how much we will need to spend to restore the environmental damage, what has been lost. From your briefings thus far, do you have any numbers as to how much is needed, monetary-wise, to restore the environmental damage? Do you have any numbers from your briefings?
Well, I don't have exact figures now, but what I've actually done, Mr. Chairman, is that normally when you are announced for a portfolio, your wish and desire and hope is that you be confirmed. And so even whilst your appointment is still in limbo, you try to engage whatever officials you may. And so I have tasked, I've spoken to a few people to begin to put together the numbers. And as you know, the Minister of Finance, God willing, when it's approved by this House, will come to the House with estimates. And therefore, whatever will be required, and I must say that a lot will be required in terms of the funding, a lot will be required. And I'm not looking at only governmental sources. I believe that the green world out there, if we're able to package programs which are attractive enough, we can attract funding across the world to be able to support. So I don't have an exact figure now, but we have begun a reflection along the lines of how much we need and how to raise the requisite funding.
Just to indicate that the World Economic Forum is projecting some $29 billion, which is quite a staggering amount. And you will have a lot of work and fundraising to do when nominated, God willing. But let me move to my second question, which I take from the 2020 budget and economic policy statement presented to this House on the 13th of November 2019 by the Honorable Minister responsible for Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta. We wish him a speedy recovery. At page 148 of the budget statement, he reported to this House that as part of the Operation Vanguard task force's assignment to fight galamsey, the following seizures and confiscation was effected. To quote specifically, says that the seizure of 2,779 weapons and ammunition, seizure of 4,049 other mining equipment, which includes the over 500 excavators which remain missing.
Please, 2,000?
It's 148, page 148 of the 2020 budget.
I don't have it. I just want the numbers.
2,779 weapons and ammunition. Seizure of 4,049 mining equipment. Then over 1,727 illegal miners arrested. That's the update the Honorable Minister provided to this House. From your briefings, are you able to tell us the state of these seizures? Particularly, as you know, there's been a raging national debate as to the whereabouts of these mining equipment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'd like to explain that the seizure of equipment is dramatically different from confiscation of the equipment. The law makes a distinction. The Minerals and Mining, Mineral Operations, Tracking of Earth-Moving and Mining Equipment Regulations 2020, LI 2404, and the Minerals and Mining Amendment Act 2019, Act 995, makes a clear distinction between seizure and confiscation. Seizure is when you seize the equipment. It gets confiscated when you go through a judicial process and get the equipment confiscated. So yes, the number quoted by the honorable member, he uses the word seizure. And so when they are seized, there are multiple reasons why they may be returned to their original owners when they come to prove that perhaps they were no use for illegal mining or that it didn't belong to this person or that person. So that cannot be the only basis upon which we can make a definitive conclusion that these are the number of equipment which were ultimately confiscated and which therefore will have to be accounted for as we speak now. Number two, Mr. Chairman, I have had a briefing from the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, and I want to put on record, based on the briefings they've given me and the documentation they've given me, is that there were no 500 excavators missing. I mean, they've been very emphatic on that. They've been very emphatic on that on their briefings to me, that there were no 500 excavators missing. They are told that it's a media man who put it out there, and that became the, if you want, the number that was put out there and became this huge controversy. No, they've given me some figures. I mean, according to their report that I have cited, they confiscated 209 excavators, and they are able to account, as we speak, 161 of those excavators. The number of excavators released out of the 209 has all of them spelled out here. Those that were given to NADMO, those who were given to KMA, those which were given to AMA, those which court ordered them to return to their original owners. All of them are spelled out here. So this is the answer that I'll give. And I'll conclude by saying that Parliament has been very gracious, and I welcome the intervention of Parliament, where these two pieces of legislation I've just cited seems to have settled the question of equipment, which, and I don't use the word excavators, equipments are equipment. Equipment which are used for illegal small-scale mining, and Parliament is giving the instructions clearly as to how such equipment ought to be handled. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, by way of follow-up, with respect, the quotation from the budget, I was specific. You've only accounted for 209 excavators, but page 148 talks about seizures of 2,779 weapons, specific number, 2,779 weapons and ammunitions, and seizure of 4,045 other mining equipment, not just 209, 4,045 mining equipment. 4,045. That is the record of this House. So,
Honorable, what you accounted for, were there equipment or excavators? What you just recounted, that others, which one were that? Equipment or excavators?
Mr. Chairman, I brought in the bit about excavators because he mentioned that 500 excavators were missing. So I sought to clarify that. But he is talking about equipment, and equipment are not necessarily excavators. I mean, equipment could be anything. There could be champagne, there could be boats,
There could be wheelbarrows, there could be cutlasses, there could be all kinds of things. But the most important point that I sought to make, which I want to repeat, is that there is a world of difference between seizures and confiscation. So you could seize a lot, and yet ultimately you don't confiscate all of them. To be able to confiscate, you have to go to court.
Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, we want a report on the status. This is your own budget, government's budget statement, report to this House.
Darmin?
Talking about seizures. The report is not ambiguous at all about seizure or confiscation. It gives us specific numbers. We have seized 2,779 weapons and ammunition. We have seized 4,045 other mining equipment. I'm asking a simple question. Where are all these items seized? What is the status from the briefings you have received so far? If you don't have the information, you can let us have it later when you further consult.
Mr. Chairman, my good friend, the Honorable Okudito Ablakwa, should vote for me. And if he votes for me and I get the opportunity, I'll be more than gracious. I'll be a servant of this House. So I'll be more than gracious to appear and give him an update. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I thought that my good friend will have provided the report before we take the vote, so that it could have informed how we vote. But I'm willing to move on. My third and final question will relate to a few reputational matters that I think I should give you the opportunity to respond to. Just two of them. The first one is the Ghana Web report dated Thursday, 5th December 2019, which reports you says Abu Jinapor openly assaults former Agric minister. That is the Ghana Web report of 5th December 2019. It appears that the report suggests that you engaged in some fistcuff at the Damba Festival in Buipe, the central Gonja district of the Savannah region, following what the report claims to be disrespect to the former president, John Dramani Mahama, when you refused to acknowledge his presence by not standing up. Alaji Lemuna Muniru is said to have been verbally assaulted by you. That's what the report claims. I can let you have it so that you respond to that. The second matter is a Ghana Integrity Initiative report dated August 28, 2017. Under the heading, Kennedy Japan's Flagstaff House bribery allegation damning and must be investigated. This was a statement put out by the Ghana Integrity Initiative signed by the Executive Director of GII, Linda Ofori Kwafu, when the Honorable Kennedy Japan, a senior member of this House, sought to suggest that presidential staffers and people around the president were demanding money from business people. He put a figure as much as $20,000 to see when investors and other people wanted to see the president or sought an appointment with the president. A demand was made by GII for investigations. My checks and researching before this hearing did not lead me to any conclusive investigation on this matter and the demand made by the respected Ghana Integrity Initiative. Do you want to respond to these two matters to at least set the record straight?
Honorable Sujet, I want to be clear. The second one,
yes.
Has his name been specifically mentioned? I want to be specific if it's about him or just a general statement.
It's about his position, office holders. It refers to deputy chiefs of staff, presidential staffers, workers around the president.
Well,
that's what the Honorable Kennedy Japan. I'm sure he may have heard the Honorable Kennedy Japan make that allegation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me very respectfully submit that reports from news portals always have to be looked at carefully. Chairman, I recall a report on one news portal which said I was engaging some row with somebody in my constituency, and a picture came out, only for it to turn out that the picture was actually shot from Adabraka, and whilst I was in Fufusonya Warpe, in the enclaves of Achibonyo and other places. So reports by news portals, Mr. Chairman, with respect, I want to, with the greatest of respect, be looked at and looked at carefully. That is number one. Number two, Mr. Chairman, the allegation that I engaged in fisticuffs with Alhaji Muniru Limuna, the former Minister for Agriculture, and disrespected former President Mahama. My first response is that the Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa, the Honorable member from North Tongue, is a very good friend of mine. We are extremely close. We are literally like family. And I'm sure he will attest to the fact that I will not engage in an argument, let alone fisticuffs. Mr. Chairman, in all humility and modesty, anybody who has dealt with me, even casually, and I repeat, in all humility and modesty, will attest to the fact that I'm a gentleman. I'm a proper gentleman. I don't even engage in arguments, let alone fisticuffs. The Honorable Alhaji Limuna Munira is my uncle, my direct uncle. And in Northern Customs, it will be completely scandalous. It will be a sacrilege for me to even talk back at him. And I met him 2 weeks ago at a funeral, and we had very cordial engagement. I have absolutely nothing against Alhaji Muniru Limuna. He's my uncle, and we get on very well. Former President Mahama and me disrespecting him. Again, let me say, Mr. Chairman, that this allegation and this claim was an allegation which was waged extensively and vigorously in the run-up to the 2020 campaign in my constituency. It was run by my opponents. We all do know the influence that President Mahama wields in the Savannah region. That is not in doubt. That is his home region. So it's always politically expedient for one to say this person is against President Mahama or this person has insulted President Mahama, and it's always for political gains. This is a hearing of, this is a public hearing. So there are a lot of things I can't say on this platform.
Chairman, let me come, keep it there. Chairman, let me come in. On that fateful day that the Honorable Ablakwa is talking about, I just want to measure your conduct. If Abu Jinapor, you are seated at a ceremony of culture of Damba, and President John Dramani Mahama, as he then was, walks in, did you rise as a sign of respect to him as former President of the Republic on that occasion?
I have risen on sight of President Mahama anytime I've seen him. I will rise on his side today. I will rise on his side tomorrow, if for nothing at all, for the office he occupied.
And you did that that particular day?
I always do, and I did that.
And you are sure that that day didn't take to a moment where somebody threatened slapping the other that day?
Never. And President Mahama himself will attest to that. He knows I respect him a lot. He will never deny that.
So there were no verbal exchanges?
Never.
Of you saying that you had organized this particular Damba festival and therefore you were running the show?
Mr. Chairman Leader, people say all kinds of things, trust me, with the greatest of respect. I crave your indulgence that people say all kinds of things. It's unfortunate I have to be answering some of these things. People say all kinds of things.
Yeah, I know Limuna is your uncle. So, yeah, Chairman, I just wanted clarity on this because in several instances, the talk have been that when the side, if I were anywhere and I saw President Kufuor or late President Rawlings as a mark of respect to their person and to the authority of the high office of president. I owe them a rise to honor them. But the statement at the time was that when President Mahama came in and was greeting, you refused. That's why I just want you to clarify. It's an opportunity. You are speaking to the people of Damongo, the Boya, even people in Tamale. So clarify it, that when you saw President Mahama, you didn't demonstrate that respect. Is that true?
I did give him that respect. And in fact, it's sad. In our custom, when I'm with him in private, I don't even stand. I squat to greet him. And he knows that. President Mahama knows that.
You know that may be a misinterpretation of somebody who doesn't know that the custom is to squat. You assume that when you squatted, it means...
But on this occasion, I rose. On this occasion, I went to meet him there, and when he got up to speak, I rose. And the honorable minority that knows I'm a very respectful young man. He can attest to that.
Let's move on. Yes, which one was the second one?
The what?
The allegation that some...
Yes, that I'll just give a straightforward answer. President Akufo-Addo's presidency and government is not a transactional presidency. Akufo-Addo is a man of enormous integrity, absolutely incorruptible, and he insists on that for all his appointees and aides. Particularly at the presidency, the president will not superintend or oversee any such transaction. And none of that thing happened, to the best of my ability, to the best of my knowledge, and the president will not permit it, because the president is there doing the work of Ghana. He doesn't transact, and he's a man of integrity.
Is the president working with angels?
He is not, but I'm saying that if that came to his attention, he will not permit it. And the system that we supervised at the presidency at the time I was there, that was obviously not possible.
Any reason why you didn't respond to the Honorable Kennedy Japan? Why didn't you respond to the allegations? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the Honorable nominee. Salt, as a mineral resource in the country, seems not to be given a lot of attention. However, figures on our salt deposit in the country shows that if we are able to concentrate our efforts in mining salt, in addition to our mineral resources, we will generate substantial amount of money from that sector. I've heard you this morning talk about your vision of establishing a salt development authority if you are given the nod. A number of factors have been stated as militating against the development of salt in the country. One is the intensive capital requirement for startups to be able to go into the salt industry. There is also lack of state-of-the-art salt harvesters for salt operators in Ghana. And then also there is communal tussle over coastal ownership, which sometimes results in legal encumbrances for potential investors in the salt industry. In Ghana, we have about 500-kilometer coastline. And if we are able to develop the salt sector very well, we can create jobs and wealth for this country for those who reside in the 500-kilometer coastline from Keita to Azim. Beyond the Salt Development Authority, are you going to lead a salt policy which will help address some of these issues that have been raised?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if I get the nod of this House, the decision whether or not to establish a salt development authority will not rest with me. I will not have the final say. I will have to go to Cabinet, to urge on the Cabinet for the establishment of such an authority to develop the full value chain of salt in Ghana. In fact, it has to come to Parliament. So this is just a proposal I've made. But the necessity to develop that value chain in Ghana, I believe, is extremely important.
And in developing that value chain, I've talked about the need for us to have a salt terminal here in Ghana, which is what will make us competitive, and build refineries as well, and also add value. Thank you.
The lack of supervision has been one of the challenges we face in this country when it comes to exploitation of our natural resources. At the vetting of the Minister nominee for Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, the Honorable Dr. Kokofi proposed that we should have a system where we separate reclamation of the land and restoration of the land from those who go to, in quotes, destroy the land. What is your view on such an arrangement where in this country mining companies will not be required to do the reclamation efforts themselves, but we should have either the MMDCs or different entity who go after they have done their mining to restore the land and possibly the waters as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think it's a very useful proposal, and I think it's one worth examination. The issues of reclamation, the issue of reclamation and revegetation as they relate to large-scale mining and large-scale mining companies doesn't seem to be much of a problem. I think the real problem has to do with small-scale mining, because the law relating to small-scale mining simply says when you excavate, within 30 days, you must fill the pit and you must revegetate. So that is not stiff enough. That is not tight enough. So I believe that between myself and the Minister for Environment, we should be able to come together to find the mechanism, strategy, or policy which will ensure that reclaiming degraded lands becomes a permanent feature in our country. Thank you.
Yes, Gisela.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, I'm particularly impressed with your science background, physics. But I see, it seems that the law seems to have overrun the physics. So I'm going to appeal to you to bring the physics and the science back to your portfolio. Because between mines, lands, and forestry, I think that you know that the science is very important. You are Generation Y, a millennial, young, ambitious, confident. The onus lies on you to show leadership and make a difference in this sector. The SDGs end, the target date is 2030. We are in 2021, 9 years to go. If you're not reshuffled, you have 4 years in this portfolio. So that is a good time to grab it and run with it. That is friendly advice to give you. The question, my question is, what are you going to do? What will be your policy direction on the sustainable extraction of aggregates for the infrastructure sector? Sand winning, quarrying, any other materials that are used, mainly used for in the infrastructure sector, and how it affects the communities, local communities that are neighbors in that vicinity. What to be your, you're going to give that much attention, or is just going to be the quarries are going to bulldoze their way and have their own, you know, just run their own operations? And what about sand winning? Because it's a very important aspect in communities whereby people just come with excavators, no control.
He has heard the question.
Thank you.
What will be your policy direction on extraction for construction?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me first of all thank my sister, the honorable member, for her kind words, and to say that collaboratively and with her support and other people, I believe we will work in the interest of this country and for the good of the Ghanaian people. Mr. Chairman, my assessment of the whole sector of lands and natural resources, I think the biggest issue in that ministry is regulation. I think the biggest issue is regulation in all aspects of it, whether it's land,
whether it's forestry, whether it's the mineral sector, whether it's sand winning, as she's rightly indicated, whether it's quarrying, whether it's salt regulation. Because it's a ministry where a lot of money is involved. And when you are talking about gold and all these other businesses and extractive industry, there's a lot of money that goes on. So my simple answer to the question, and that answer goes to a lot of the issues and aspects of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. I find my job, if I get the approval of this committee, well cut out for me, which is what will be the leadership required and the framework to regulate the whole land and natural resources for the benefit of the Ghanaian people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we expect more action and let's talk.
Well, certainly, madam, certainly.
Oh, for sand winning, and what is the regulation?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, first of all, you cannot win sand without license. You cannot. I mean, you can't win sand. First of all, you need a license. Second of all, you need to win the sand within a regulated framework. Yeah, so it's regulation.
So all you need to do is to identify an area and put up a notice on the district assembly hall. That's all.
Yes.
And even that, nobody checks to find out whether indeed the area you have demarcated is the area you're winning the sand.
That is correct.
So the regulation itself, in my view, isn't sufficient. And I'll ask you to pay attention to that one.
Okay.
Very well. It's done. Chairman, you have had so many. when you acted as a leader, you took advantage to more to push out. Yes,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Honorable nominee, once more, congratulations to you. I have just two questions. The first one has to do with land guards. There was this article titled Land Guards, State Subordination and Human Rights in Ghana, and it's been published by the International Journal on Human Rights. And this was the conclusion they made. They said the weak law enforcement capabilities of the state and rampant corruption in the land management institutions facilitate conflict in land markets and encourage people to resort to individual security mechanisms. And this has been the reason why we have land guards around, to the extent that when you come to my constituency now, Medina constituency, you have even public lands being encroached with land guards, and sometimes police officers also post as guards for private people. What are you going to do to stop the menace of land guards in Ghana?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the straight answer to the issue of land guards, and again, I should repeat that I will need the approval and get into the ministry to have a fuller understanding of the situation and be able to come up with a more comprehensive strategy in dealing with the issue of land guards. But having said that, there is a direct correlation between an efficient or otherwise administration of land and the issue of land guards in Ghana. There is a direct correlation. If land title is indefeasible and there is no fraud in land administration and registration of interest and title in land is smooth and effective, automatically it has a tendency of reducing the incidences of the situation you've just mentioned. Enforcement is also going to be important. Having put together your land administration correctly, or even before that, the enforcement mechanism will also be extremely important, and the security aspect of it in rooting out the people involved in this situation. But finally, Mr. Chairman, I think Parliament, in the enactment of Act 1036 and the express criminalization of land guard situation in our country also will help, because Section 12
of Act 10 to Act 10, Act 136, Section 12 of Act 136 expressly outlaws the phenomenon of land guards. So that will also help with prosecutions, convictions, and in the process, I believe that it will help a lot. So this will be my answer to that, Mr. Chairman.
Right, and a quick follow-up to that. So, for example, in Pantai Hospital, where you have government lands being encroached upon by private individuals, and all attempts to salvage the land for future development of such public facility or public good is becoming problematic. What would you do to protect such government or public lands for future use?
The public lands of Ghana, constituting about 20% of the lands of our country, are the properties of the Ghanaian people. The lands of this country, public lands, are vested in the president for and on behalf of the people of Ghana. So the requirement to protect public lands, in my view, is sacred. And Mr. Chairman, I know that a lot of efforts has been put in place already. I've been briefed that some public lands have been recovered as we speak. Even since my announcement, Mr. Chairman, I've had to be involved in warding off encroachers on public lands. But I mean, what the collaboration between the Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Local Government, and my ministry in forming a multi-sectorial or multi-ministerial committee or arrangement to ensure that the public lands of this country are protected will be extremely important.
So my second question has to do with land administration again. From my research, I realized that about 67% of the Land Commission's revenue goes to the government of Ghana. And so the Commission is unable to generate sufficient funds, particularly when it again has to rely on the government. Are you willing to make the Lands Commission an autonomous body for proper management of land-related matters in Ghana?
Well, the functions of the functions of the Lands Commission, by the dictates of our national constitution, are largely autonomous. The Constitution says so, with the exception of, I think, Article 258 or so of the Constitution, which empowers the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources to give policy directions to the Lands Commission with the approval of the President. Largely, the operations and functions of the Lands Commission are independent. But the financial independence of the Lands Commission will certainly, like any other agency of the state, be subject to the directions of the Ministry of Finance. I mean, it is so for every agency in Ghana, and it is so because Parliament has enacted laws to that effect. But I will conclude by saying that if the Lands Commission gets more efficient, if we're able to work to get to the point where the Lands Commission is more efficient, the delivery of their services are more efficient, people have confidence in the Lands Commission, they will generate a lot more funds, and therefore the little that they are supposed to retain will actually be enough. So we need to also look within the Lands Commission itself.
Yes, Honorable Deputy Leader.
Chairman, thank you so much. Honorable nominee, you are aware of the Minerals Income and Investment Fund Act. Now, as a sector minister, run us through what would you put in place to, one, ensure that there's more Ghanaian ownership of mining companies, and two, that we get value for our gold. In view of the law we've put in place, how do you intend to facilitate that? That's my question one for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the matter relating to Ghanaian participation in the mining industry are in twofold. There is the local content bit, which large-scale mining companies as well as small-scale mining companies are required to respect the provisions of LI 2431, which is the local content regime for the mining industry in Ghana. So that is one bit. So a wholly foreign-owned large-scale mining company will still be required to adhere to the tenets of LI 2431. So I've already answered that, which is that we should effectively and ruthlessly enforce the provisions of LI 2431. But there is the second one, which is indigenous Ghanaians or entities or companies or enterprises having a controlling stake in large-scale mining companies. That is a big issue. Today, we have about 16 large-scale mining companies in Ghana. 12 of them are operating. None of those mining companies has a Ghanaian controlling stake. So it means that all the mining in Ghana, I don't want to name mining companies, but I'm saying that all the mining that takes place in Ghana in a large-scale sector, not a single company is owned by Ghanaian entities. None. Now, yes, as a government, I think we should create a conducive environment to attract investments from abroad. We need to attract foreign and direct investment. No two ways about that. I will be more than prepared to do that and work with the Ghana Chamber of Mines closely to ensure that we promote foreign investment. But there is the need for us to put in place policies to ensure that there is indigenous Ghanaian participation in the mining sector. I've been told that in Indonesia.
But you know that the objective, if you look at the enactment carefully, the objective of that law is to ensure that we get more value for our gold. I need you to emphasize on the steps to ensure the realization of this objective, because it's very important. Many are concerned. How do we actualize our mineral resources? How do we give it value for the purpose of development?
Yeah. So the Minerals Income Investment Fund, I believe, becomes one of the major platforms upon which we can have Ghanaian participation in large-scale mining in Ghana, because one of the functions or mandates of the Minerals Income Investment Fund is to invest in mining operations in Ghana. So yes, and for instance, the special purpose vehicle that they've actually attempted to create a Japan and all of those are some of the reasons or the objectives for which that framework or that arrangement was put in place.
So are you saying that the Japan, for instance, that you've just mentioned, the agreement is in line with that agreement that came to this August House in 2020? Are you saying that it's in line with the object of the fund?
Chairman, what I'm very much agreeing with the honorable leader that the conceptual underpinnings of Japan, the creation of that special purpose vehicle, is very much in line with Section 4.1 of the Minerals Income Investment Fund Act 2018, Act 978, which talks about the functions of the fund, which is to leverage incomes or whatever that comes out of our gold mining for purposes of supporting mining operations in Ghana, and which ultimately can cure this lacuna or can fill this lacuna of indigenous Ghanaian companies and enterprises not participating in large-scale mining in Ghana. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the Japan is not owned by that entity. Per the report we heard, it is owned by some individuals who were using the platform.
No.
Is that the case?
Japan is owned 100% by MIF. Japan is owned 100% by MIF, by the Minerals Income Investment Fund, which is a creature of the act of this parliament. And the Minerals Income Investment Fund
is a creature of statute, and therefore, by extension, Ejapa is owned 100% by the good people of this country.
Mr. Chair, I want to have him on record. So, your contention is that, in line with the realization of the objects of this enactment, the Ejapa agreement in itself was not a private sector owned. It was a creation of this very enactment, and that it was a special purpose vehicle through which the objective of the fund was to be realized, and that entity itself, by being created, is 100% owned by the state and not any private sector participant.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, it will be totally illegal and totally contrary to the teachings of the Minerals Income Investment Fund Act, 2018 Act 978, particularly Section 4.1 of the Act, if an individual owned even a share of Ejapa. And it is therefore my contention and submission that Ejapa, as currently constituted as a special purpose vehicle, was constituted by the Minerals Income Investment Fund, whereupon the Minerals Income Investment Fund is 100% shareholder of Ejapa, which therefore means that Ejapa, the Minerals Income Investment Fund, being a creature or a creature of the Act of this Parliament, is owned by 100% by the Ghanaian people, by the good people of Ghana. They own the shares of Ejapa 100%, not an individual.
So when they get onto the stocks, eventually, I mean, at what point will there be private sector participation? And is there any intention to offload majority of estates to the other investors? Do you have any briefing on that?
Mr. Chairman, the briefing is right here in Section 4.1, which states, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, and I quote, that the functions of Ejapa are spelled out, and I quote, for the purposes of, I'm very sorry, Mr. Chairman, the functions of the Minerals Income Investment Fund states, and I quote, Section 4.1, for the purposes of achieving the objects of the fund, the fund shall manage, deal in, and invest minerals income accruing to the Republic received by the fund, hold and manage minerals equity interests of the Republic, and exercise all rights related to the minerals equity interest. Seek the best possible financial returns on investments, having regard to internationally recognized best practices for
okay.
and it goes on.
That's okay. So you have the law with you.
I do.
Can you? Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, now let him finish the answer, and if I permit you, you continue. Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, the point I'm making is that the establishment of the special purpose vehicle Ejapa, pursuant to the Act of Parliament, is very much in accord with the instructions of Parliament itself, that MIF should leverage, monetize, add value, invest royalties accruing from gold, royalties accruing from our minerals, which they have done by the establishment of the special purpose vehicle Ejapa. And the floating of the shares of Ejapa is actually in accord with the provisions of Act 978, particularly Section 4.1 of the Minerals Income Investment Act. It's very much in accord with it, respectfully.
Yes, Honorable Nominee, please, you seem to have the law with you.
I do, please.
Can you take us through the membership of the board of MIF? Can you?
I have it here. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, the membership of the board is found in Section 5.1 of Act 978. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I quote, the governing body of the fund is a board consisting of A, a chairperson, B, the chief executive officer of the fund, C, a representative each from the following ministries, not below the rank of director. I, Ministry of Finance. NII, Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. B, three other persons nominated by the minister. E, the Commissioner for Domestic Tax Revenue Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority. And F, a Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, nominated by the Governor of the Bank of Ghana. 2, at least 3 of the members
Honorable, it's good that you identify where it is in the law.
Yes.
We know where to find it. So for our purposes, that should be sufficient.
Yes, please. I'm grateful, Chair.
Yes, Honorable.
Chairman, I'll take the minister. I'll come back to Ajapa because many of your assertions, as you are led by the deputy leader, is not in sync with what was brought to Parliament because you insist that it was 100% holding. I do know that the SPV was seeking to give out at least some shares, 51 to 49, but I've asked for a parliamentary Hansard. So, Chairman, I'll end with Ajapa with him. But now, when the Honorable Ablakwa referred you to seize equipments or excavators, you were seeking to contradict your own Minister for Finance, Ken Oforiatta, and not him. But I refer you to your handing over notes. Important changes. And Chairman, I do have a copy here. Ministry of Lands and Forestry, transitional handing over notes for the period 2017-2020. And now you gave 209. In the handing over notes, if you come with me, where you have the heading, important changes, it reads, Cabinet directed the ministry to take direct responsibility to streamline and manage small-scale mining activities. So it means an obligation for you tomorrow if you do become minister. The ministry took inventory of various equipment that were seized by the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, IMCIM, and gallant stock. And Chairman, my emphasis, and resulted in the sighting of 159 excavators. So which statistics should we stand by? That of Ken Oforiatta in the budget, yours as given as 209, and 159 as captured in your handing over notes. Which one should we stand with? Minister nominee.
159 of excavators.
159, that's what is in the handing over notes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Handing over notes of the ministry, I suspect. Ministry of Land.
Chairman is here. 159. Excavators is even in bold with the 159. So these are not my words. I just want to know which numbers you want us to stand with. Your number, 209. Handing over notes, 159. Ken Oforiatta, 2,000. No, that's weapons. Weapons is 2,779. Mining equipment is 4,000. What should we stand with?
Mr. Chairman, I will very respectfully crave the indulgence of the committee and particularly the Honorable Minority Leader to hopefully, if I get a nod, to possibly come and give a full account or statement on matters relating to...
That's appreciated. So you come and brief us on state of equipment and to respond to whether some have been missing or not, and to report further to this House. Were there any mineral seized, like gold? When you go, be interested in it. We only hear weapons, we hear excavators, but we know that some minerals itself were seized.
I wouldn't know at this stage.
So when you go and be interested in it, may I refer you again to your handing over notes? You've responded to it, but just to give me a policy blueprint. The challenges of your sector, illegal mining, Galamsey, President is committed to it. He has faith and confidence in you. You cannot fail him. Persistent activities of land gas, as the Honorable Sosu, a member for Medina, mentioned, particularly in the Greater Accra region. Illegal harvesting of timber especially in forest reserve, what policy blueprint should we expect you to walk the country through as Minister for Lands and Natural Resources? Thank you, Chair.
Land guard and timber. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on the issue of land guard, I've attempted an answer, which is that the whole effort of perfecting land administration in Ghana, in and by itself, will have some correlation on the issue of land guards. Because essentially, let's face it, Mr. Chairman, the land, I don't justify it, I don't think that it should be countenanced, but it's a reality with us, and it's a reality with us partly because of the difficulties with land administration, multiple titles, multiple sales, fraudulent sales, and so on and so forth. And then people then take the law into their own hands and try to protect their interest in land. And all of us know that land has a big attachment, and people like to protect their land. So the more we reform land administration in Ghana and make it efficient, the more I believe the incidences of land guard will come down. And also the intervention of Parliament in criminalizing this kind of phenomenon will also help. And finally, enforcement. Timber. Mr. Chairman, there is the Timber Development Division under the Forestry Commission, which both are under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. We need to strengthen that division.
Chairman, may I now take the nominee? Just specific. Mention 2 steps you intend to take as minister to increase the forest cover of the country. What will you do? Just 2. Even if you identify with 1, what will you do to increase the forest cover of the country? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, first, I personally am very passionate about this Ethiopian example. I'm extremely passionate about it. The report is that the president of Ethiopia led a program, a crusade of planting some 350 trees in a day. And I have actually added a few reflections on how we can do it here in Ghana. The thing about getting...
How many trees will you help us to plant?
I think we should be able to plant 100 million a year.
When do you intend to launch this? When do you intend to launch this?
June 5th is the World Environment Day. But let me put a caveat. Let me put a caveat, which is that these are my ideas, these are my reflections. They are subject to cabinet approval. In some cases, they'll be subject to parliamentary approval. So I may think this is a brilliant idea. I may go to cabinet and it will be shut down. So the back will not stop with me. But I think it's a noble idea. I think it will help if we're able to.
Okay, Chairman, let him go and canvass. If you are successful, do it. But I don't see any controversy over wanting to learn from Ethiopia in planting trees and increasing our forest cover. Now, specific. What will you do to reduce the turnaround time in land title registration? What will you do? Specific. Land title registration. You've responded to it. I want specific.
Yeah, but we have to digitize the records of Lands Commission. Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Minority Leader knows that you cannot make any headway if people can, for instance, go into the Lands Commission, and then you have a land transaction, you go there, you can't find a file, and it becomes an issue. Or there's an issue of interest in land, and what type of interest is it? We're asking questions as to where to find the interest in the land, where to find the registration. You cannot find it. So for me, the program to digitize the records of the Lands Commission is totally, it's just non-negotiable. We cannot make any headway if we don't digitize the records of the Land Commission.
All right, Chairman.
That will be the number 1.
I want to find out from the nominee. Are you aware of the Youth in Afforestation program, which employs about 300,000 persons?
I'm very aware of it.
Are you aware that they've not been paid some of it, and for some months? Has that been brought to your attention in your briefing?
That has been brought to my attention. I'm very concerned about it.
How many months is outstanding that they have not been paid for having worked for government, youth in afforestation? And when will you pay them?
I think from the briefing I got sometime last year in November to date, they haven't been paid, but I spoke to the Ministry of Finance, and the indication I got was that I think the arrangements have already been put in place for, I think, a month or two to be paid. So it's a matter that I'm very concerned about, and if I get opportunity, it's a matter...
Chairman, I should be concluding. At your forest, you've endeavored to respond to aid, but it's a globally significant biodiversity area, and you have to match a delicate balance between the forest reserve, conserving it, particularly with headwaters for Densu, Birim, Ayensu, and against exploitation of mineral resources. Where will you stand between the two, conservation, biodiversity, and then exploiting minerals for the good of the country? Where will you be as minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Minority Leader is more than aware than I am, actually. He probably has more experience in this area than I have. Mr. Chairman, anywhere in the world where you have extractive industry, that conflict and that complex situation arises wherever you have extractive industry. For the environmentalist, nothing should be dug out. The forest or the ecosystem should be left as it is. For the people who are looking at the economy, we should exploit our mineral resources for the growth of the country. Where I will stand is an intelligent, sustainable, skillful balance, which will ensure that, yes, we are able to exploit our natural resources for the good of the country, but at the same time, we do not unnecessarily jeopardize the environment. And as I said, as I indicated earlier, the Chief Executive of the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation, Mr. Paul Ansa, is very, very passionate about the environmental issues relating to Etiwa. And he's actually indicated to me that he set up a whole green unit under the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation, where they are going to ensure that fauna and flora are as much as reasonably possible and practically possible are preserved.
Chairman, as I said, the nominee's father, the Bupeura, is my uncle, and he knows that I do relate very well with him. He certainly should be proud as your growth and development. But I entirely, in concluding, disagree with you when you are responding to the deputy leader, and you must check your brief properly on Ajapa. If you recall, I'm holding the Hansard of 14th August 2020, when the matter came before Parliament, and there was a relationship agreement, and what you refer to as 100% is not the case. Because in the relationship agreement, if you want, I'm just reading from Chairman Asibe when he submitted this to the House, and he even said that Ajapa, if the fund in aggregate together with any associate holds at least 10% of the voting rights attaching to shares in Ajapa and one additional member on acquiring at least 30%. So I'm just saying that you may have your brief, but your brief may not be as accurate as what was presented to us. Also note further that in monetizing those gold resources, monetization against the 1 billion, the Mineral Development Fund will necessarily have suffered, because the commitment was to use those mineral royalties to service this particular debt. I don't intend to engage with you, but compare your notes against what is formally official before the House. Chairman, I wish the nominee well. I thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just make a quick comment on that. The point I made, and I want to emphasize, is that ab initio, when Ajapa is established, the shares of Ajapa will be held 100% by the Minerals Income Investment Fund. Of course, it's a fact that Ajapa as a special purpose vehicle, or if you want, for want of better expression, as a subsidiary of the Minerals Income Investment Fund, will float
part of its shares on the stock exchange for purposes of raising capital for infrastructure development. That absolutely is not in doubt. So when that is done, the Minerals Income Investment Fund will no longer hold 100% of the shares, but at the level of the conceptual formation of that special purpose vehicle, the Minerals Income Investment Fund will still have 100% of Ajapa. It's only when it's been floated on the stock exchange that Ajapa will lose some shares, and which will therefore mean that MEF will no longer have 100%, and the Ghanaian people will no longer have 100%. But it's for valuable consideration, and that is the whole purpose of Section 4 of Act 978. And finally, Mr. Chairman, the 20% royalties that are to be paid to the Minerals Development Fund, that is non-negotiable. That will not be compromised in any way, both at the conceptual level of Ajapa or through the floating of the shares. The Minerals Development Fund's 20%, that one is sacrosanct. That will not be tampered with.
Chairman, as I said, I don't want to engage in debate with him to speak to official record. That's why I requested for the Hansard. And for the record, yes, the interest in the Mineral Income Development Fund is 100% wholly government owned. But the Ajapa, as was registered to conduct those transactions abroad, was not to hold 100%. Ultimately. Was not. Ultimately. That's not it. No. If you are talking about just Mineral Income Investment Fund, and that was part of our objection here, that you are taking our money and you are now going to, well, part of what Ajapa was to do, the government was now even to become as if we're contributing. So read the act right. That one, I disagree with you entirely. On IMF, we are in tandem with each other in our thinking. But on the shareholding, as to the SPV, your contemplation is not the same thing as what was submitted to Parliament. I thank you, Chair.
We'll find a way of continuing the debate. The two of you comes to the same thing. But thank you. Thank you. Can you switch off your mic? Yes. Thank you for attending upon the House. I'll ignore Honorable Ahi. Thank you for attending upon the House to answer questions. We will hear from us later. You are discharged.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. You have to help me.